Happy Saturday, everyone. How's it going? Hello, hello. Hi to everyone. Hi, Marina. Hi, Stacy. Hi, Janet. I saw some people in the chat right away. Hi, Carolyn. Good morning, everyone. Or good afternoon or good evening. Just say hello. That's good. How's everyone doing on this wonderful, creative Saturday here for Asked and Answered? So that's a good thing. I like that. Hey, Kathy. How are you? Hey, Jana. Desiree's here. Hi, Mario. I know Mario's here. I just hear him clicking away, so I know he's getting everything ready and going for us. Hi, Audrey. Hi, Louisa. How is everyone? Doing well? I'm excited about today. I really am. I do like this whole series. So welcome to Asked. I have to asked and answered. Yeah, there you go. Good morning, Jen. Hi, Cindy. Hey, Nikki. So yes, if this is your first time, hey, Barbara. How are you? This is your first time watching one of these lives for Asked and Answered. This is a kind of a different series that we started this year, which is really kind of a live Q&A, if you will. Good morning, Sue. Hey, Boo. How are you? And the whole idea is that we'll pick a topic. Today's topic is alcohol ink. And I'm just here to answer questions. And some of those questions might be conversational like this. Others might require a little bit of a demo. I'm set up with all my alcohol ink stuff here that if I need to demo it, I will. And yeah, we just hopefully get the questions that you have about a specific product answered. I think that's really important. Hey, Cynthia. Hey, Julie. And the only thing I ask during this is that you please keep your questions relating to the topic. You know, we've already done, I think we did Distress Glaze, we did some Distress Basics. This one is alcohol ink. So that's really kind of the only, I'll just say guidelines, if you will, is that, you know, if you're asking questions about distress or whatever, sorry, that's for a whole other Asked and Answered or a different live. This one, alcohol ink, and of course that's going to include alcohol inks, mixative alloys, pearls, surfaces, that types of things. But I'll tell you this, what I found really interesting, I'll say that, interesting, is that when I posted this, the announcement yesterday, Kulbir, when I posted this yesterday, there were so many comments from you guys saying I have the inks and I haven't used them before, or I own some, I'm intimidated by them, whatever that is. And so I hope if you're one of those people that left the comment, or if you're one of those people that are thinking, yeah, that's me right now, that you actually have the alcohol inks out on your table, in your craft room, if you are at home around your craft room, and you create along, because I think that's the other important thing about this type of series. It's a little bit more low key. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is that it does give you the opportunity that if you have a question or if you haven't used a product, that having it in front of you and kind of taking it for a test drive, I think is really important because you'll be able to connect to that stuff. So yeah, I think that's really good. Yes, alcohol lift ink is part of that too. If you have a question when we get started, that's really important. He's revving up. We're not going to do it, but I want to say, I want to have a Mario cam, and it's just a quick Mario cam, because it's always about the entrance. Because when we do a live, he is circling the studio behind the scenes, because he's got to set up the iPad so I can watch the chat. He's making sure that he's making sure that everything's open and working before we go live. But it's when he comes into camera that it's literally you can't see him, but he really knows his mark where you can't see him. And as soon as he stops, it's like he does a little jig. It's not a dance or anything, but it's he doesn't know. There you go. He doesn't know how he wants to come in, but I think that's fun. So they wanted to see your smiling face. So
happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday. This guy doesn't like the camera, and that's okay.
You know what? You're better here. You stand.
You don't
do
have,
your thing,
but that's the thing.
Right.
Here. You don't have to like the camera. That's okay.
Right,
that's the thing. Right. That's the thing to know about Mario. This is where he's comfortable, and I think that you need to do you, and that's what he likes. He's like, I'll be here, but I'm not going to just stand there and look while you're talking and bounce your head, because it's weird. It is weird when you have to do that.
Shine up here.
No, I got more shine right here that you don't even need to worry about. I love it. So yeah, we're gonna have some good fun.
Have fun.
We ready to go?
Yes, we're ready.
We are ready. Okay, cool. So yeah, we're just gonna get started. Go. No, that's it. I don't need to switch the camera for these. So I'm just gonna see if there's any questions that we have. Yeah, we're good. You are cracking yourself up. It's like a mirror to him. He loves it. So yes, so for alcohol ink, I'll just talk about just some basics. And like I said, I do have a demo set up. But alcohol ink in general, And I'll wait to see if we have any questions. Of course, Mario is going to be looking as well. Alcohol inks are a solvent-based ink, and that right there is very important for you as a maker to take note of, because typically when we're dealing with ink pads and sprays and all of that in our creative industry, the majority of those are a water-based medium. Okay, they clean up with water. Alcohol ink is solvent. So first thing you need to keep in mind is safety. Now, everybody has different safety factors, so I'm not here to tell you exactly what you need to do. Okay, you need to make those choices as far as what creative medium you're working with. But alcohol ink, because it is solvent-based, you need to work in a well-ventilated area. For some, that means having a window open, or a fan going, or a door open, or wearing a mask. You need to do what you're comfortable doing. As far as wearing gloves, some techniques I wear gloves because I don't want the stain mess. Others, I just use my hands, but some people don't want it on their skin. Those are all choices that you need to make. But the most important thing from a safety aspect is in a well-ventilated area, because the fumes from the solvent, it does make you happier than you should be, but you need to really be in that area so you don't get lightheaded and all of that. But as far as all the other precautions, because really when you talk to different alcohol ink users or artists, they all are like, oh yes, I wear a mask, and that's great. They need to, or I always wear gloves, or I wear apron. So those are choices that you need to make, but that's really the gist of it. Because it is solvent though, it does allow for a whole different use of a colorant. We can use this on non-porous surfaces. That's its specialty. Now, people ask, well, does that mean I can't use it on regular cardstock? You can, but it's just an ink. It won't do anything that you've seen alcohol ink do on regular paper, okay? It needs something slick. Now, when I say non-porous surface, in a card maker world, then that's pretty much just different papers. Yupo, glossy cardstock, that type of thing. But in the other world is so many different surfaces out there as far as metals, resin, ceramic tiles. I mean, anything that's going to be a slick surface. Now, this is not for anything food grade, so you shouldn't be inking your dishes or wine glasses or all that. However, some people have done that from a decorative standpoint. Like maybe they want to alcohol ink like the stem of a wine glass for the holidays and then just clean it off, because solvent cleans off solvent. So you can clean this with rubbing alcohol, hand sanitizer, anything like that. As far as color fast, light fastness that a lot of artists tend to ask, that's really up to, again, the person or the artist. I don't seal anything because I'm just a maker or a creator. I don't plan on selling my work. But there are alcohol ink artists out there, and I follow several of them that are amazing, that work on huge pieces of artwork. I mean, we're talking they sell their stuff to galleries. I mean, their stuff goes for thousands of dollars, and they do have different sealers that they use. And everybody, it's really interesting, they have kind of a different formula or recipe that they use to seal, because there is not a specific sealer made for alcohol ink that everyone loves. So there's different UV fixatives, there's different spray sealers, but as far as a typical everyday crafter / maker, you don't need to worry about sealing it. It's not going to come off on your hands. It's only going to come off if it comes in contact with a type of solvent. So that's important to note. If you're interested in learning more about maybe the field that you want to use alcohol inks in, maybe you're a jewelry artist or you like to dip it into resin, that type of thing, my advice is to Google it. There are so many groups out there and different accounts that you can follow on social media that can actually dial into your specific use. There's an alcohol ink art community on Facebook that is amazing. They have teachers that will teach alcohol ink classes. I mean, there's so much stuff to know, but I think what's most important is that you need to start with what you're comfortable doing, okay? And that's really what I like to do. I like to kind of stay in my lane with alcohol ink and just do what I love to do. And I admire the people that can do amazing, amazing art. Everything from painting, I've seen flowers, I've seen mixed media. It's all types of kind of crazy things. So I see a question from Kathy. Would you make brown if you mix the wrong colors of alcohol ink? Yes. So alcohol inks are typically translucent dyes. So when you think of colorants, it is no different than like a water-based colorant like an ink pad. If you mixed all your different colors of inks together, it would make mud. It's the same thing. This is just a solvent-based versus water-based, but the colorant is still a translucent dye. They also have different additives. We have things like alloys and mixatives that are metallic, and we also have pearls, which have a really cool factor to them as well. All right, so okay, I'm gonna jump over because I see a question from Tony. Different effects with isopropyl versus blending solution. Let's go there. Let's start with that. I have some stuff set up, and I will tell you, I've got a table full of things. This is just for display purposes only. There's different tools, and we'll talk about that too. I'll try to watch the chat best I can, but first question was about alcohol blending solution isopropyl. So alcohol inks, translucent inks, they're in little bottles. These bottles, this is a different type of plastic than most of the Ranger products that are in, because this is a solvent, and solvents tend to evaporate through plastic. So that's why you'll notice the alcohol ink bottle is a much higher density plastic, so we don't get that evaporation versus something squishier like a squishy bottle. Okay. You can store them however you want. Some people store them on little shelves. Some people lay them down. Just make sure if you plan on being one of those people that throw them in a bin like I do, I have them in my little spinner in my studio. Always make sure the caps are on, because these suckers like to leak, and when they leak, it's a mess. Or you can do a storage tin. Ranger has these great alcohol ink storage tins that are also stackable, so you can stack all of your stuff. So I have many tins. There are 85 colors of alcohol ink, 18 colors of alcohol pearls, and 13 alloys and mixative combined, which are the metallics. Okay, so there's a lot. Now, do you need all of them? No, you don't need all of them. Do you want all of them? I don't know. That's totally up to you. But we're going to answer the first question, which is about blending solution and isopropyl. Now, as we get started in demos, another thing that I want to remind you of, like, if you have never used it before and you want the basics, the basic rundown, my advice is to go to timholtz.com, type in alcohol ink in the search. I'll also put that link in the description after the live, and Mario can put it in the chat as well. But check those out, because I've done alcohol ink exploration lives, which are like 2+ hour lives where we go through all the basics from how they're formulated, how to actually create swatches, all of those things. The Asked and Answered series is really not so much my agenda, it is yours. Okay, that's the most important thing. I have some when they first come out. Do they expire? The thing about alcohol ink, as with any art medium, it's not an everlasting gobstopper. I don't know if there's an expiration date. I wouldn't say there's an expiration date to alcohol inks, but I would say that if you don't use them, your colorant could build up what I've experienced is like a sediment, where it gets a little grainy when you're doing your artwork. And if you experience that, then that would be because I think the colorant starts to break down over time. I've only ever had that happen like maybe twice to 2 different colors, and we've had alcohol inks out, believe it or not, since I think 2004 or 2005. So it's a lot. But as far as like an expiration date to product, no. But products are designed to be used, because to answer that question, there's so many different variables. You know, some people experience different things if they're in a high humidity, or, you know, maybe they have a drier climate where it's like even down to drying time. So that's use them. That's really it. Okay, I'm just gonna do this. The question is, alcohol ink used in any of your creative chemistry courses? I believe so. Yes. Not as intense as this, but yes. Okay. So I've got inks over the side. You're going to see me stand up those inks, but I just want to talk about what that first question is, which is what's the difference between blending solution and isopropyl alcohol? And this is going to be a good foundation to start. So I appreciate that question. Because these are solvent inks, you need a solvent to get them to do their thing. So that's what you have to understand. So what is a solvent? A solvent is alcohol, okay? But there's different types of alcohol. Some people try to confuse alcohol ink with watercolor, or using water with it, where they think like, oh, I can normally put ink down and spray it with water, it does its thing. Water will not react alcohol ink because it's not a water-based medium. But if you want to create those watercolory effects, it's very simple. Solvent, like rubbing alcohol, is to alcohol ink like water is to watercolor, meaning it's the liquid that's going to react and get this moving. So when we talk about rubbing alcohol, 91% or higher isopropyl alcohol is what's recommended. That's what I have in my bottles, all type of different apparatuses. I'll talk about that. And then I'll also talk about blending solution. When you work with 91%, because it's isopropyl, this is probably the most common medium for moving alcohol inks, because it is inexpensive, it is readily available, and it's also safe enough to spray, so you can put it in a sprayer. I used to use a mini mister. Okay, I used to use a mini mister to put isopropyl in. In fact, there's all sorts of different tools. We'll talk about that in a second. But I use so much of it that I started putting it in a bottle. And Ranger sells empty spray bottles. Like you can go on their website. They sell, remember we used to, when we were doing the mica, we were doing all sorts of different decanting. This is how you get it. You get them in a bunch with a mixing ball. You don't need a mixing ball in the alcohol. But I like this bottle, but you could put it in a bigger bottle. If you wanted to take heck, you can take a sprayer and fill it with alcohol, but you only fill it with alcohol. It's the only thing you should spray it. The other thing, and you'll hear me refer to isopropyl as ISO, because I'm not going to say isopropyl a bazillion times. So ISO. You can also put it in little needle tip bottles. This is another great way to use this particular solvent to move things around. The other option, of course, is blending solution. Now, blending solution is really alcohol ink without a colorant. And some people, like when this first came out, they were like, oh, it's such a scam. You're charging a lot for just nothing but isopropyl. Well, you can tell already that the color, it's not clear. It has a little yellow tint to it. And that's because this liquid contains a resin. And when we say resin, we're not talking today's resin where it's like this thick pouring goop. But along those lines, it is a liquid resin that allows the colorant to bond to slick surfaces. It is what makes it actually sticky. Because alcohol inks work on, as we said, non-porous surfaces, which includes metal, plastic, glass, all types of different things. So blending solution is this base without a colorant. So it does have resin in it. Now, when do you use it and when you don't? Well, that was the question, and that's what I'm going to demo just to kind of show you the difference. Sometimes it makes no difference, but for certain products, it makes all the difference in the world. Now, blending solution comes in this size bottle. It doesn't come any bigger. This is the biggest. But you can also get it in small bottles. So if you wanted, like maybe you're going to have your inks in a tin and you want to travel somewhere with your tin and you want a little bottle of blending solution, that's why it's nice that Ranger made that small one, because we wanted one that goes in the tin. So I have both options. Okay, now see, it's like that one question kind of becomes the catalyst for a lot of things before I even get to the answer. So I think it was Tony that answered. She's like, get on with it. Well, before I do, I need to just cover the basics really quick. Tools. You're going to see me use a lot of different alcohol ink tools. A blower, it's an air blower. This is very much like what you would have for a camera lens. The difference is the bulb is much larger and the aperture, the opening, is also much larger, because unlike a camera lens cleaner, we don't want that really sharp burst of air. Otherwise, everything looks like spin art. We want the ability to just create little bits of air to move things around. People use air compressors. I've seen canned air being used. The ink applicator tool, if you're familiar with the blending tool, it's the same handle, but instead of foam, we're just using felt. There's nothing special or proprietary about the felt other than it's cut in circles. So could you use regular craft felt? Yes. Could it be other colors? Yes. Sometimes the solvent will react with that color in the felt, so I typically start with white, but this becomes disposable. Could you use blending foam? Yes, but it's disposable, so you're going to go through a lot of it. Tools, paint brushes, and mini mister. This is creative convenience. There's nothing significant about these brushes. Could you use any paintbrush? Yes. Could you use any kind of sprayer? I already covered that. Yes. We just do this, again, creative convenience for the customer. And then an alcohol blending pen. This is essentially just like an empty marker, but it's not hollow on the inside. It actually has some fabric in there that you would fill with blending solution. And what that means is that then I could actually take this pen and color with it. Maybe we'll get into that if there's a question down the line about that. But those are kind of the basic tools that I'm going to be working with. Then we'll talk about, real quick, just surfaces, because surfaces are also important in the world of alcohol ink. There are so many surfaces on the market, not just the Ranger ones. You do not have to only work on Yupo or Duralar or Dura-Bright or anything alcohol. You can work on all types of slick surfaces. People use transparencies, acetate. I've seen people use the back of photo paper from the dollar store. If it works for you, use it. But there are certain features and benefits to surfaces, like with anything else. Like not all watercolor paper is the same. Not all tags are the same. So if you find a surface that you like, use it. Okay. The reason we wanted to go with these specific ones is because these companies are known in the art world for these great surfaces. You can see their logo at the top. Yupo is a brand, and they cut this size paper for the Ranger line because they sell it in big pads in the art store. There is white Yupo, which is completely opaque. There is translucent Yupo, which you can kind of see through. And there is Yupo heavy stock, which is double the thickness of standard Yupo, that if you wanted to create like an art panel, it's really great for that. You can also buy Yupo in larger sheets. Ranger also has it in bigger sheets if you wanted to cut it down yourself. So you have options for that. I tend to work on Yupo most of the time. We talked about graphics. We did this a little, I don't even remember when I think we did the acetate when we were actually die cutting some stuff, but you can use the graphics. I talked about this at Sizzix. It is a translucent, almost like an acetate, but it's heat stable, so you can do all sorts of cool things, Dura-Bright, and then of course the metallics. So I'll tend to reference surfaces when I actually use them. Alcohol ink cardstock, when I first started using alcohol ink, gloss cardstock was the jam. It's what I used back in the day. And I'll talk a little difference about Glossy and Yupo if we get to that too. But first, we got to get into that, answering the question about ISO and blending solution. So I'm just going to take a piece of Yupo. I'm just going to cut it really quick. So I could have had a bunch of stuff pre-cut, but I don't want to because I want to answer the question, does it cut? It cuts with most trimmers. It does even cut with a slide trimmer. It just depends. I tend to use my guillotine most of the time, but this is also a die cuttable surface. Okay, so we're just going to do a comparison, a side by side. Now, I tend to work on a glass mat. I like working on a glass mat. I like to work on a protective surface. If you work on your dining room table, alcohol inks will stain the wood. They will go right into that finish. If you work on, say, a craft sheet, it will also stain a craft sheet. So if you have a white craft sheet or even a brown craft sheet, it tends to kind of bleed into the fibers when that breaks down and stain it. It doesn't make it that it doesn't work, it just stains it. So I'm working on a glass mat. If I'm working on something synthetic like Yupo and I want to move the inks around, which of course I do for this one, and I'm going to use a blower, a quick trick is just to take, because Yupo is synthetic, it is plastic, so it's the same on both sides, but it's like a plastic paper. Just get a spray bottle of water and just give a little mist to one side of that, because like I said, it's the same. And when you place it down on your glass mat, it won't move at all. You don't need a sticky mat, you don't need anything versus that. So a little bit of water is just, it makes it really easy to work on your glass mat. I'm working on my studio mat from Tonic, which is white, but if you have a medium mat, which is black, you can do the same thing. But just a little bit of water just makes it so much easier to work with, okay? So now we're just going to go back and forth with product. We're going to, just for the sake of this asked and answered, we're going to keep ISO over here. That's going to be isopropyl, and we're going to do blending solution over here. Okay, so we'll do that. ISO and blending. We'll do that for all of them. So the first one we're going to talk about is just how these colors move. If you are in the habit of taking a color, we'll take Fiesta. That's really a bright color. You'll see, like when I open this, the resin is really kind of goopy. It's just how the bottles are going to be. Okay, so when you're working with this, you can see that little kind of crust that goes around. That's going to be inevitable with your alcohol ink. So my advice when you open colors, don't open it over your background, because see these little, I don't know if the camera's even picking it up, those little tiny crust things, that's actually colorant now. So when I use it, those little flecks of color are going to go everywhere. I don't care for the sake of the demo, but when I'm working on a piece, I always remember to open my bottles off to the side. And you can leave these open, believe it or not, even though it's solvent and it has a fast drying time. Its drying time is usually under 10 seconds. There's a little bit of ink, and I'll try to, I think the light's gonna, you can see it. See that little dark bit of ink that started rising to the top? That bead of ink sits there and it keeps the air from going into the bottles. So when I work with my colors, I'm gonna put them, you'll kind of see them up here. I probably should have maybe moved this down. Let's see if I can slide these. God, it's so crazy, surface tension. Isn't that just like, it's a wild thing. Okay, I tend to use the grid on my map, on my mat, just by taking the bottle and I put the cap behind it, so then I can remember what I have, because I like to keep the bottles open when I'm working with inks. Super important, okay? If you have trouble opening the bottles, get a little grippy, get a little, shelf liner, or you can even use a cloth. Because the resin, as I mentioned, that's the stickiness, that resin in the ink, it tends to want to like fuse those caps on there. So it's one of the things, I mean, gosh, I remember when we would travel and teach with these inks that Mario would actually put these on with pliers because we didn't want them to leak in transit. And then, gosh, getting to the next store, it's like, I can't even open those. So you can use rubber gloves, you can use a towel, just whatever it is to open them. Oh, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, you could even use media grip. So I just have a couple bottles of inks open. Now for starters, it's like, well, what colors do you want to work with? I'm just doing this for Asked and Answered because really when you start with a rainbow, you cannot go wrong because you can create so many different color blends, and that's why we launched these 8-packs, because so many people said, oh my gosh, 85 colors of alcohol ink, like where do I start? It is important that you have a pretty good basic palette because it's going to allow you to do magical things, and that's why there are different elements to each kit. You know, there's Cosmopolitan, which is more urban, there's Brights, there's Classic, so this is really good, and it has an alloy in it as well. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna just dust that little crust off because I don't have any solvent there yet. Let's just do the basic. I like to start with a layer of solvent, and here's why. I'm gonna put a little bit of ISO here, and then I'm gonna drip a couple of drops of alcohol ink there, and then I'm just gonna drip alcohol ink directly onto the Yupo without any solvent. So right there you can see how different it is. When I go to move it, if I use a blower, it's going to move that ink, but it's going to be really intense and saturated. That little bit of ISO, look at how much more flow it's giving me. It's allowing me to move that color around. These inks will always react with each other and with any kind of solvent. Always, always, okay? Even you come back to an alcohol ink piece that you did 2 years ago, if you put solvent on it, more alcohol ink, it will rework everything, which is great because it is pretty foolproof. Blending solution, from a basic use like this, is going to be very, very similar, but you will see one distinct difference from a color perspective. So I'm just going to put the same, I think it was 2 or 3 drops, and I think 2 drops there. Obviously that's going to be no difference because that's just the same piece of paper. This one's blending solution. This, you're going to get a different kind of flow. It's not going to be as, I'll say, as wispy or as bleachy, and the color is going to be more intense. Why? Because this is the foundation or the main ingredient in alcohol ink. Okay, so that means it's going to maintain its color integrity a little bit better. And I'm not saying this is bad because I use ISO probably more than blending solution now for big flowy pieces. But ISO, if you use too much of it, it has a tendency to really wash out the color. Typically for alcohol ink artists, that's what they want. They want this color to like fade in and out to another color. So that's really the biggest difference between the two. If that question is like, what's the main difference? Well, the main difference is that blending solution will maintain its color integrity better than ISO, but ISO has more flow and movement than blending solution because remember, this is still a resin. So if you start dousing your work with blending solution, it's going to get really sticky, really quick. If you use ISO, it never gets sticky. So you can kind of flow around and do all of those things. I see something in the chat from Ranger, which is really important because Canadian customers that buy at Michael's, they have to be shipped with a special cap, which is like a childproof. I hear it's like impossible to unlock it and people hate those caps, but you can also buy just the regular caps from Ranger on their website. So you can, once you get that childproof cap off, you can replace it with a regular cap and you don't have to get flustered, but that's just something that Ranger has to do for that. Okay, so there's the basic of just simple. Okay, now I'm going to take these off. To take them off of your mat, I just use a craft pick because you saw I'm just breaking the surface tension and that will take that off. There's our ink right there, beautiful, vivid. If you're going to dry these, like any medium, if you allow this to air dry, you're just going to get more depth. If you want to speed it up, you can use a heat tool, or you can use a fan, or you can use a hair dryer. So we'll get into different ways that we can move the ink. So there's kind of your up close where you can see that blending solution pretty much maintained the ink throughout, and ISO gave it a little bit more fade or gradation in color. Okay, because blending solution is designed to blend. Can you use ISO and blending together? Absolutely. And we'll talk about that when we do pearls. So let's do that because that was just the basic. So cleaning. You can clean with ISO, of course. You can clean with blending solution. Crazy. This is like money in a bottle, so I would never clean with blending solution. Plus, you're putting resin on the glass, so the glass would get sticky. If you want, it's easy to just take ISO, spray it, take a cloth, clean it up. If you have a lot of alcohol ink in areas, the best way to clean a work surface or a glass mat is hand sanitizer because it's gel and it just stays wet longer, okay? So Next, let's just work with some different colors, okay? I just see a question, can you use other types of paper to work? Yeah, I already covered that at the beginning about anything non-porous, everything from photo paper to Dura-Bright to Dura-Large to glossy paper, all of those things. So let me just take a couple more pieces of Yupo. Let's just chop some up real quick. I was going to cut some up, but then I was like, I'm sure someone will ask. Now I'm out of workspace as always. So now I'm going to just trim right from the middle because that's what I want to do. Okay. What causes graininess sometimes? Graininess usually has to do with the not using the inks for so long, and you might get some sediment, or when you open the bottle, you inadvertently let some of those little crumbs, those dry crumbs, fall on your work, and maybe you didn't catch it, and when you're working with it, those crumbs never dissolve, they kind of stay crumbly. Okay, so there we go. So next, I'm just going to start working and playing around with color. And now that we've talked about the difference between blending solution and ISO, the question is like, well, which one to use when? That's totally a creative choice. That's up to you. I'm going to just always going to spray a little water just so I don't have to worry about that moving. And let's just talk about blending the colors and how you want to work with it. I'm going to take just a little bit of ISO, and I'm going to just do a little trail down the side of this paper, and I'm just going to take a couple of colors. So we'll just do pink, we're going to do some yellow, and we'll just do a little bit of blue. And blue could be turquoise. This happens to be sailboat blue, but it could really be anything. All right. Next, I'm going to take the blower, and we're just going to start mixing the colors. And you're going to see that the inks have some great movement, but if you put them in while they're wet, wet on wet blends, wet on dry layers, just like if you're using any other kind of ink or spray. So by putting them on wet, when the pink and the yellow touch, we get a little orange. When the yellow and the blue touch, we get a little bit of green. And we can keep that flow. Now the blower, you can tell, I'm just using like little bursts of air. I'm not doing this. Like you're not hearing that and seeing all that air move on my skin. Not taking blood pressure, just going in and just gently using the air. And you can direct it. So you can angle where you want that to go. Now, if you want to keep this going, so let's say you're like, oh, I wish that blue would have trailed off the paper. No problem. Just go in with a little bit of whatever solvent you want. I used ISO, so I can keep using ISO, and that will just re-wet that and help you move that. It's incredibly forgiving. Let's say you wanted a little bit more movement out in here. Well, same thing. You can go in with some ISO. Now, as this ink starts to dry, you can see what that solvent is going to do. It's going to start creating that white space. So it just depends on when you're adding the solvent. I tend to try to keep things wet if I'm moving it around, but you can also go in and move things around with a brush. So if you just wanted to, let's say you wanted to get really fussy right there and kind of move that, you can just take a paintbrush and you can still move that ink while it's wet and fill in the blanks or pull in color. Or maybe you just wanted some color here. I've got ISO that I keep in a little bottle. So you can take that. Maybe I wanted to have a little bit more ink there. Okay, well, I can put some ink on the side. I can pick up some wet ink with a brush, and I can go in and just fill that in that way as well, because I don't want to risk throwing some more ISO on the work. See what I mean? So you really have some great flexibility when it comes to working with your inks. Now, as this is drying, we also have some other options. If we wanted to create some cool effects, we can go in with a little spray of ISO, and a spray of ISO is going to create this almost like a galaxy or starry effect. Now I just want to pick this up I want to hold it closer to the camera just so you can see whether we're dry or not dry. So see that wet? That means the ink is not dry yet. I want this to be dry before I go in and add this. So I'm just going to use a hair dryer, but you could also use a heat tool, but we talk about this hair dryer a lot in alcohol ink. It's a Conair. It's like a 2-in-1 brush. When you can buy these, I got mine at Walmart, but you can get them on Amazon, whatever. It's a really nice hair dryer because it focuses. It's just like a typical hair dryer, so it's nothing special. But I just don't use the brush attachment, but I like that I can angle this, and it has different settings, high, medium, low, all that. It's got a heat setting. So this I can just use to quickly dry my ink. But could you use a heat tool? Yes. Could you use a fan? Yes. It's just what I use. But use whatever you have. Use whatever works. Okay? Just people always ask, like, what is that trick, it's just a hairdryer. Okay, watch when I add a little bit. Remember, this is ISO. I'm going to go from a distance, and you can see what's going to happen on that background. Okay, let me hold this closer so you can see. It was one little spritz, but see what it did? See those little spots? Now I'm going to hold it closer to the camera just so you can see what it did. If you hold this close, you'll see, it's going to blast out that great little speckly effect because solvent reacts with solvent. So this is a really fun way to add those little speckly kind of movements. Now, the more you add, the more it's going to start to work this ink and kind of dissipate. If you want something that's a bit more dramatic, well, you can use a splatter brush. A splatter brush, it's the same splatter brush if you've ever seen in demos that I use for paint or ink. You can use it for alcohol inks, or you can use it for isopropyl. So you can splatter on like a pink or a blue or whatever you want if you want to do ink, or you can do ISO. The brush is exactly the same. It's just sometimes we brand things, just for the creative convenience. So even like the palette, we have this in distress and alcohol ink. We have this in distress and alcohol ink because depending on the retailer, they might have all the alcohol ink stuff together, and this palette works for both mediums. So it's more of a packaging thing and not so, ooh, here we tricked you. That's never the plan, because we'll talk about the palette too. So if I wanted to splatter some on, you'll see I can just put some ISO on the mat, use this, pull this back. This is just going to give me bigger drips. You'll see, I'll hold that up in just a second, because the splatter brush is actually splattering. So see just those bigger drops. So totally up to you what you want to do. So that's a simple background for alcohol ink. Okay. Do I clean up all the time? No. I'm just going to use it until I need to kind of move things around. But let's just talk real quick specifically about, well, no, I'm not going to go into that. Has there any questions that I've kind of missed because I'm trying to watch? And Mario, have you seen anything?
No, I haven't seen anything.
Okay. Okay. I'll keep watching. So, because I don't want to just get so caught up in what I'm doing that I don't really answer your questions. A palette for alcohol ink is also really cool. We talked about this in the Easter Live when I was doing the baskets. You can put your alcohol inks in this palette and let them dry. These are all dry. The beauty of alcohol ink, it's very much, like I said, watercolor. When you have a watercolor set, unless you're squeezing in the tube, typical watercolor sets are hard, they're dry, and you wet them to bring them back to life with water, and you go in with a paintbrush and you paint with it. It's no different than alcohol ink with a palette. You can use them dry. All you would do, let me just move this off to the side, is let's say I wanted to color something. These are alcohol inks, these are mixatives and alloys, we can get into that in a second, that I can take. Why does a single color break into other colors? Janet, that's because of the formulation. That is 100% by design. When we first started doing alcohol inks, we created a palette using a variety of different colorants, different dyes, and that's the magic of alcohol ink. A lot of brands use like straight on dyes for their blues or greens. The chemists, we wanted to create unique colors, and I think that's really the most special feature of our alcohol inks is that breakdown. You create some cool effects. I'll do that with black just to show you. So that's what people love, is all those different undertones, because it's not just like, oh, we have this special purple. No, to get all the different shades of purple, we're mixing different colorants to get those different shades and tones, and that's why when you add solvents, you get unique breakdowns that surprise you. Sometimes it's a blue or a red or a green that you weren't anticipating, and I think that's what makes it magical. And you really don't get that breakdown until you really flood it with a lot of ISO or blending solution, because at first, well, you saw right here, it maintains its color integrity, but you keep going, you're going to get those great breakdowns of color, which I think that's my favorite thing about the alcohol inks. Okay, so on this, here's some options. Well, we can go with our brush, and the brush, again, this is alcohol, this is ISO, this isn't water, but I can take that wet brush, and even though this ink is completely dry, I can pick up that color with the brush, and you could go in and paint with it. Now, you could watercolor with this on transparencies, you can use it on anything. If you were going to use it on regular cardstock, it's not going to do its thing. It's not going to be as magical as you anticipated. See, this is watercolor paper. So you're like, oh, I get it, I could just watercolor with it. Well, not on watercolor paper you can't, because unlike watercolor, this is just, it dries way too quick. That's why you need the slick surface. And that's why it's so important to understand the properties of alcohol ink and not be afraid of them. It's so fun to use. If you wanted to do something that was more controlled, that's where the blending pen comes in, because you take this, it's got two different nibs. You actually just pull the nib out. You put the solvent in, you could squeeze it in. You can squeeze blending solution, but there are people that squeeze isopropyl in here instead. And then it's got an airtight cap system, but it actually has solvent in it. So I can take this pen and go into a color. Maybe I want to take a little bit of purple. And again, this is dry, but that blending solution reacts. And now I have an alcohol marker that I can color and blend and do all that stuff to clean it. You can scribble it off. You can dip it into isopropyl. You can do whatever you want, but it's almost like a self-cleaning thing, because the solvent, see, it stains it, but there's nothing in there. See, there's no color now. So then you can go and pick up another color. I mean, obviously, I think if you were going to do alcohol markers, you would probably do alcohol markers, but sometimes you don't want alcohol markers and you just want to do a little bit different. Okay. And all of these, again, I'm just using Yupo just because it's synthetic. And to me, that's going to give you the best result, is a synthetic paper. We'll talk a little bit about glossy cardstock when we get into lift ink, because I saw that question. Okay. So that's the easiness of a palette. Or like when we were doing the baskets and we were painting and I needed fluid ink, I dripped fluid ink in there and painted with fluid. So you don't always have to paint it dry. If you wanted a lot more color, you could easily just drip some alcohol ink in that palette. You can still go in and use a brush, but the difference is obviously when you pick that up, see how intense that color is? Just depends on you as the maker, what you want. But this is a very easy way to manipulate ink and color, and every time you go in, I mean, you can just do all sorts of different things, like you can do different drops with your brush. I mean, it's simple stuff, but it requires play. Okay. Kay Andrews asked about the palette, which I did answer. There's no difference in the palette or the splatter brush between alcohol ink and distress. No different. It's just a branding thing for convenience of the retailer. Okay. Perfect. I'm just going to use a little sanitizer. Going to clean this off. All right. I'm just getting the bulk of it off. I'm not going to take all of it off. Okay. Question, how do you stop the ink from flowing if you're trying to use 3 colors on a piece of Yupo and one keeps overtaking the other? Well, you can apply them separately if you wanted to, or you could apply a tool. So let's say we wanted to just use a felt tool because we wanted a little bit more control. Just going to mist the back with some water. We can take this ink applicator, take some felt, and we can take some different colors. So here we can add a little bit of pink. You can dab some of that color on. We can take another color and we can use this same piece of felt and we can start introducing that other color and we can combine them. But if you're like, okay, well, hold on, I want more yellow and this is taking over, well, then you're going to need to change your felt because you have pink on there. Remember, alcohol ink reacts itself. So even if that pink seems to be dry, appears to be dry, once you add another solvent to it, even if it was blending solution or ISO, that pink is going to come back to life. It will. So if you wanted to control that better, you could just take a new piece of felt, add some ink. So now we're going to add yellow. And now I can just add more of that yellow. And I can still blend it in to what's there. But remember, once you touch into that, you're going to get some of that color on the tool. So you can kind of just make yourself aware of that. Now, blending, let's say I wanted this to blend more, because right now you look at it and go, okay, this is a little too strategic. Okay, well, I'm going to just take some blending solution then, because I want my color to maintain its integrity, but now I want a little bit more blend. Now, I put it over yellow, so it is going to introduce yellow. So to be fair, let's just take this off. To be fair, to show you the true blend, I'm just going to take a clean piece of felt. Now, can you save the felts and reuse them? I don't suggest that because it's still a solvent, it's combustible, but you could let them air dry, and I suppose if you wanted to keep a felt for that, but I just wouldn't get in your head like as if it was a blending foam. I just think that that's really meant to be disposable. So now I put blending solution on a clean piece of felt, and now we're just going to go in and like blend this out. So I'm just going to move some of that pink a little bit more. See, pull some of that color. I'm going to just go into this red, and now I'm going to pull some of this color down at the bottom. But now I can go back to that yellow felt because that was the whole deal about controlling that yellow, and I already had blending solution on it, remember. So now I'm just going to go in and just kind of pull that out. So I can now take some of this yellow and bring it up through here. You know, it's always going to react, and the lighter you touch, this is where it gets a little tricky. The lighter you touch, it's going to react. So see in that yellow where I'm stamping, see those little dots? It will always react with itself even when dry. So pressure also plays a role as far as, you know, are you like doing that, like hammering, or are you just giving little taps, little tippity taps, because those also create some cool effects. But beautiful background. The thing about this is don't overthink the ink. That's the whole important thing. Don't overthink it. Question, can you use specialty stamping paper with alcohol ink? Is it non-porous? It's slick? Yes, you can. It's not going to work the same as plastic, so let's talk about glossy cardstock. Specialty stamping has now been retired, so I don't have that to demo, but I will show you glossy, which you kind of should answer your question about a slick paper maybe versus Yupo. Okay, so alcohol ink cardstock or any other kind of coated paper, okay, it's going to have a front or back. Typically it has a coated side and an uncoated side, unlike a synthetic, which is plastic through and through. This is paper, so this will rip. This is plastic, it will not, okay? It will just kind of create a kink. But there's a distinct difference in how these surfaces handle ink. Very distinct. Let's go in. I think I'll go in and use the alcohol ink blower. Let's do that. We're just going to use some color on that. Just so I can show both, and then I'll use the tool as well, just to kind of handle that. So take a little bit of ISO on both. Let's just do a little bit of green. We'll throw a little bit of blue. Maybe, yeah, there we go. And maybe just a touch of purple. Okay, some cool colors. And let's just take the blower and kind of move this around. Remember, this is glossy. The torn one is glossy. There we go. That will help. And this is Yupo. Okay. So right away you can see when it blends completely different because the ink soaks right into the glossy surface. Okay. The biggest difference is when you want to go back and do more things. And it's forgivability. And sometimes for makers, that's probably the most important factor when it comes to creating a background, is how permanent is it? Yes, you can stamp on these. I'll get into that next. I'll talk about that as soon as I'm done with this one. So if I move this around, that's going to be my color. If I move this around, that's going to be my color. But now if I want to add a little bit of blending solution, because remember we can use both together, put it there, put it here. I can continue to like move and manipulate this ink, but over here, you can't really go out of the box because this is stained. So this is incredibly porous. So while it works, it's great, it's not as forgiving as this. Also, the colors maintain their integrity. Remember, we only used blue, green, and purple. And the purple was quite dark. This is purple twilight. But this one looks kind of pinkish. Well, that's because the glossy paper, the white part of the paper, is what's shining through because your ink starts to soak into this paper. And if you keep going, it'll soak through the back of it, whereas Yupo won't do that. So that's the other factor. I don't want to say there's a right or wrong. Everybody has a personal preference. I used to only use glossy paper, but now it's like when you work on something synthetic, you have way more creative freedom because you never have to worry about the colors becoming mud or overusing it, especially when I go in and talk about an ink tool real quick. Mario, you remembering some questions? Right now, the only one that's in my head is going to be stamping. So, okay, I'm taking an ink tool, glossy, Yupo. Okay, so far so good. Usually on the first round, so far so good. Now we're going to go back and we're going to just kind of blend some of that out. So I'm just going to take a little bit of blending solution. Could you use ISO for this? Yes, but we already know the difference from the very first question, which was a great starter, by the way. When I go on glossy, getting a little muddier. When I go on Yupo, play. Okay, I'm going to go back. Blend, blend. Here's our difference. See the distinct difference? Glossy, once it gets color, it's not going to give it back. It's like, here it is, I'm taking it. And that's, of course, alcohol ink cardstock, gloss cardstock. That's how it's branded. It's glossy paper. So it really has to do with freedom. And if you haven't played with your alcohol inks much and you only have glossy cardstock and you've been frustrated, my advice is get yourself some Yupo or any synthetic paper that you like to work with. I think you'll be much happier with the results. Even down to spraying with alcohol. I'm going to do that on glossy. I'll actually give it a couple sprays, and I'm going to do that on Yupo. So even how it works, this is alcohol on glossy. It just kind of creates almost that spongy finish, and here is alcohol sprayed over the ink. It's way more reactive because synthetic. So there you go. Perfect, perfect. Let's get this stuff out of the way. I'm just kind of building a stack. Okay, let's answer the stamping question. Then I see something about other surfaces. Yeah, if we don't get to your question right away, feel free to re-ask it. You don't need to get frustrated because there's a few people in the chat. Just know that, you know, if I'm in the middle of something, I can't just stop and answer that specific question, but I want to get to the questions that you have. Okay, stamping. Let me grab some things. I'll take this. This would be a good one. I have a bunch of things off camera that I've done before. Okay, so stamping. If you're going to stamp, and it depends on the surface again, you need to work and try with different things because you have creative options. My ink of choice when it comes to stamping is going to be Archival ink. And I know that, like, I also love VersaFine Clair, like it's a Nocturne black, but not for alcohol ink because that Nocturne is a pigment ink and it's going to smear indefinitely. Archival ink is oil-based. If you try with StazOn, a lot of times when you try to stamp on StazOn, because people go, oh, okay, I'm going to stamp with StazOn because it's going to be permanent on plastic. That would be true in most cases, but because StazOn is a solvent ink, and I already told you at the beginning, solvents react with solvents. If you stamp on an alcohol ink background with StazOn, you tend to get this weird halo or your image starts to blur and you think, oh, did I not do a good job stamping? No, it's because the solvent in that ink is reacting with the solvent on that paper, and before it dries, it's creating a little wisp. Archival is oil-based, so that means it's going to sit on the surface. You can dry it with a hairdryer or heat tool, but that's really my favorite. The thing to keep in mind, though, when you're stamping is that it's still going to become part of the background. This is stamped with Archival and lift ink as well. So could we stamp on one of the backgrounds that we did? Sure, we could even stamp on like this little, you know, this little tester piece just to kind of show you. Let's see, what do I have? I brought a couple things. Let's just take something small and trivial, like a tree.
Yeah, real small.
Let's stamp a tree. Okay, it's not a big deal, but it's a tree. Okay, let's take this. I'm just going to put a stamp on here just to show you the difference. We'll take some Archival and we'll ink. We'll get into die cut, but save that question for a little bit later, and I'm happy to answer that. Okay, Archival ink. We're going to do this on Yupo. Stamp and lift. Now, when I stamp, I love to use if I use a smaller stamp, I like to use a longer block because I don't like to have a little square and try to get my fingers to stamp and stick into the surface. This just makes it easy that I can, you know, position where I want to have a stamp, and I can stamp and lift it off. Now, you can see that the ink stamps perfect on both. Glossy is going to be a little bit more crisp. Why? Because remember, this paper grabs ink and right away. So glossy cardstock is going to give you your best result for stamping. Yupo can also stamp, but it just takes a little while for this to dry. And again, you can use a heat tool or a hairdryer to dry those. If you're going to use a heat tool, just keep your distance on Yupo because it's plastic, but it is heat stable, but you just don't want to torch it. However, if you want your image to really pop, really dominate and be like, whoa, like that is super intense, the trick then is embossing. And in those other alcohol ink videos, I showed this this particular background from start to finish, but it's essentially just stamping. We're still stamping in Archival. That's the important thing to note. I'm stamping in Archival. I'm not really, you could use embossing ink, but I think it's too wet for plastic. I stamp in Archival, and then I emboss with embossing powder. Black embossing powder. So Archival, because it's oil, and see, because it's still wet, is embossable. You can stamp with Archival, you can put your embossing powder on it, shake it off, and heat emboss it. And when you do that, your image is so much more intense on the background. And I stamp and emboss after I've alcohol inked. Could you do it before? Yeah, but then you're going to get really weird resin lines, and I don't like that. I stamp the way I would stamp on any other background. I do a background and then I stamp it. So I think that's really, really cool. Okay? So that's how you get the most intense thing, is just using embossing. And again, could you stamp with Versamark or embossing ink? Yes, but your image is not going to be as crisp because this is still Yupo. This is plastic. It might work better on glossy paper. That's the whole point of alcohol ink that I said at the very beginning. If you're intimidated, you really need to play. You won't learn unless you play. You won't know what works best for you unless you try it out. Another cool thing is working on the alcohol ink Dura-Bright, which is that clear, it is a heat stable alcohol inkable. Take a look at this one. This is that wonderful Dragonfly Legend, Stampers Anonymous, stamped and embossed. I do this in one of the videos that are on the website that Mario linked. That'll be in the description box as well. But just alcohol ink, the transparency, this is swiped, so I'll talk about that. And then you could not only emboss, but you can remove some of the color. So see how we got color there? Let's see that little circle right there. Let's say we didn't want the alcohol ink there because we wanted, I don't know, we wanted it to be clear. I could go in with a brush. I don't even know when I did this, a year ago, a couple of years ago, who knows. But I could just go in with a brush and I can remove that alcohol ink just with some solvent, or thin it out, or create more of a watercolory effect. So see, I could highlight that at any time. Solvent, React Solvent. Even though this is completely dry, smudge proof, even if you were to lick your art, it's not going to come off. It's still waterproof, but it's not solvent proof. That's what's really, really cool. This was regular embossing powder. Someone asked that, but I used fine detail just because it's fine detail. But yes, standard embossing powder. But you could use glaze. Glaze is just going to be translucent, so it's going to pick up the color from your background. Okay, fun stuff with stamps. I'm just going to move this out of the way. Okay, gosh, how are we doing, Mario?
Doing good.
Boy, this chat, I love that people are so interested, but I feel like I can't answer 100 questions at once, and I really wish I could. I mean, I could, but then nothing would make sense, right? Okay, so let's see. We talked about stamps, so actually let's do a little bit more. Let's do a little bit more into that. Let's talk about stamping and lift ink. Are there any questions right away? I did see some die cut. I'll get into die cutting. I promise that. I want to work on alcohol inks and I'll work on backgrounds. We're going to talk about lift ink in just a second, but I'm going to create a few quick backgrounds so we have stuff to lift. So in addition to doing all the little, we talked about stamping a whole background. We talked about just doing parts and pieces. These are great backgrounds. We can also work with some cool things. Let's see. Can use a regular pen over these inks. If that pen will write on plastic, yes. So when you say regular pen, like a ballpoint pen, if it can write on plastic, then yes, you can definitely use it, or a paint pen as well. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about metallics. Okay. And again, I go into way more detail on metallics in other videos, but I don't know if that question was asked, but I'm going to use it right now, so I'm just going to tell you. And I'll remember to do a little bit of black. For the metallics, there are mixatives and there are alloys. And those are the metallic. Can I hand you this stuff, Mario?
Sure.
Thanks. I've got too much packaged goods. Thank you. Thanks, Mario. I have them in this other tin. In this tin, I have my alcohol pearls and I have mixatives and alloys. So mixatives and alloys, mixatives were the first things to come out in the alcohol line years ago when they first came out, which is a pigment. Okay. So these you have to shake up. These have a mixing ball. The colorants are dyes. These are pigments. So you have to shake it up. There's that mixing ball because we need to mix up the metallic. Mixatives are metallic inks. They are a pigment designed to mix in with your color, kind of give it a sheen, if you will. So they come in all different metallics. There's rose gold, gunmetal gold. There's even a white mixative. White mixative is fantastic. So is pearl. This one is pearl, and here is my white. So pearl actually creates like a pearly look to your alcohol ink, and white mixative snowcap is actually, well, it's white, and I'll talk about that when we get to black. So these designed to mix. Alloys, these were relatively new. I'd say, I mean, it's been years now, but it was the newest edition. Alloys are a leafing metallic, and so they react different than a mixative. Mixative is going to mix in, and alloy is going to give you more of those distinct breaks in your metallic background. So right here, these are mixatives. This is just on black. This is on black Dura-Bright. You could also use it on black alcohol ink cardstock. But you can see that when you use it, now remember, when it comes to a pigment, you must use blending solution. You must use some of this. You can use blending solution first and then go and add some ISO, but you have to start with blending solution. If you start with ISO, these won't stick to the surface. The metallic will just rub off when you touch it. Blending solution is going to give it that extra grab to make sure it sticks. But here you can see just blending solution, mixative, blew it out with the blower on black. Again, this is black Dura-Bright. So this is a synthetic plastic. It's like black, just think of it as like black Yupo, but it's a different company, so they call it Dura-Bright. It's from graphics. Nice, mixy, wispy look. These are alloys. So you see how different the metallic reacts? See how this becomes more clumpy and definitely more luminous? I'll actually compare the two golds. So this is gold mixative, and this is gold alloy. So see how, like, it's totally different. It has a completely different look and effect to it. So alloys to me are probably more preferred because I love the breaks in it. I love how it kind of clumps and groups together, and it just creates a wonderful effect. But you can play around when it comes to working with those, okay? So let's work with, I'm gonna do a little bit of alloy. I gotta put some stuff back, and we'll create, no thanks. I'm just gonna put it back in the tin. I'm gonna let's take a little bit of gilded alloy, and hopefully we can kind of run into pearl. So these have to be shaken. Now, the mixatives and alloys, you really have to make sure all that metallic is shaken up. And it's the same when we do pearls. We'll do a quick thing of pearls right after this. So we'll watch this demo. So like, save your questions for just a minute so I can get through these, and then you can fire away, because I want to get through the alloy real quick and the pearls. So for this, we could have done all the same things, which is using the ink tool, using the blower. That's all application. How you apply it is however you want. I'm just going to show you a different application by kind of adding all my ingredients to the glass. So because I'm using an alloy, I know I need to use blending solution. So I'm going to squeeze some blending solution on the glass. I'm going to take some alloy, just going to give it maybe just a couple of drips there. That'll be good. Then I'm going to take some ink colors. I'm going to shake on a little bit of pink. Let's do a little bit of orange. And I'll even do a little bit of purple. Okay. Then I'm just going to take my Yupo and I'm just going to drag it through. And we can create some really unique effects by dragging the ink through. Every time you do it, it's going to essentially erase or replace. Meaning, remember, solvent reacts with solvent. So if I wanted to put down some more yellow, I'm going to put down a little bit more blending solution. Or at this point, I can switch to ISO because I've already used the blending solution to attach this. But watch how this background changes every time you drag it through. And depending on like your dismount, if you do like a little twist with a back handspring kind of thing, all that movement will be in your background. And embrace the space. When you have white space in your background, that's very cool. It doesn't always have to be edge to edge. If you want to do a background like that, you can, but don't always think, oh my gosh, I've got to cover that up. Embrace the space. And less is more, meaning if you get to a point where you like it, step away from the paper. Because if you think one more swipe is going to be great, it could also just be a doom and you have to start over. When I say start over, you can keep working with the same piece of paper, but sometimes it's like, oh, but I wish this was just a... By the time you get that little wish, it's going to be a hot mess. But let's just say we want to, because we'll throw caution to the wind. This ink, although on the mat it's dry right now, it's still viable ink. Because it's just like that watercolor palette. See, once you learn the principles of it, everything should just make more sense. So if I want to re-wet this, well, I can use alcohol spray. I can use any alcohol here because I've already introduced blending solution. And see those little cool metallic veins? That's the alloy, because the alloy wants to always stay together. It's like strength in numbers, where they're like, no, I'm hanging out with my friends. No, I don't want to go. I'm going to stay here. If I want to move through this, this looks a little muddy to me, so I want to reactivate this. I'm just going to take a little bit of ISO, spray those areas I want to re-wet, and let's just go into this corner and just swipe that corner through. Look at that. So that weird little yellow island that I didn't like, I kept, and I've still embraced the space. But see how it just, magic, it just does it. So don't be afraid to play, but at the same time, if you like something, set it aside and you're done. Now, some people I know in the mixed media world where it's like mop up your backgrounds, you can do that. But if you mop this up, it's brown. So it's gonna be brown when you mop it up. Maybe that's what you're going for. But just kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at your glass mat. You're gonna get what you get. So that being said, we'll do some other colors. Okay, do you have to drag the, yeah, just like I swiped it, that's, if you want that movement, you have to move the paper through the ink, unless you're applying the ink some other way. Okay. Cool. Fun. Hey, P. Alcohol inks are fun. I mean, the thing about this medium, and I don't often say that because I think when it comes to working with different products, it's like, get out your stuff and play. When it comes to alcohol ink, like, I think you need to be in the zone. You need to have a stack of surfaces, be that Yupo or Glossy, whatever, have your inks out, and you just need to go and go and go. Because before you know it, really, you'll have just stacks of backgrounds and stuff, and even things that you think, like, we can totally rework these, without a doubt. In fact, we will. Let's complete it. Well, I like that comparison. I changed my mind. I want to keep it for after the live. But let's play with another background. Let's do some other colors. Let's do some copper, and I'm gonna dig in here. We're gonna take out brick. That's a wonderful color. We'll take sepia. That's gonna be good. And let's take a little gray as well. And I'm gonna keep pitch black over here. So many things in the brain. Okay, let's do another background. This time we're just gonna do something a little bit different. Shakety shake. Okay, I'm using an alloy, so I need to start with blending solution. There's my puddle. Doesn't mean you can't use ISO later, but you need to start with that resin or that metallic's not going to stick. So a couple of drips. You can always go back and add more, but just don't overthink it. Let's do a little bit of blue. There's some blue here, but now I'm going to open up some patina because I'm going for patina. And if you miss the mark, if you miss the puddle because you can't see it, don't worry about it. Okay, here's a little sienna. There we go. We're going to add a touch of brick. That's going to be good. That's a new color. And we're going to add some gravel. Gravel is gray. It's a cool color as well. It's going to give me a little bit of dirt. See? A little dirty gravel. And we'll do that same technique. We're just going to drag right through this. So let's drag through that. Ooh, look at that. So see, you could just be done. You could be like, you know what? I'm going to take this, add a flower to it, whatever, finished. Or we can say, no, I'm not quite done. I'm just going to keep going and I'll drag a different way. Ooh, see, I like that. Or, hey, you know what? I'm going to do it this way. Ooh, I like that. So that's not a full swipe. That's kind of lifted up. So now I get a lot of that metallic kind of coming through. I like that. I'm going to set that one aside, but I'm going to keep playing with this palette. Hey, Mario, do you have a second? Thank you. Could you just chop these this way at 3.5 for me? Just so I'm gonna take this one. Yeah, because I'm cutting over here on my lap. Okay, let's keep working with that palette. That was a cool palette. But let's add some other solvents. So we're gonna add a little gilded alloy. We already have some mined down there, which is some copper. Now you can see how that gilded, see how solid it is? Why? There's no blending solution. So let's add a little blending solution. And let's just throw in some more patini colors. This is where you just start going crazy because you can. Thanks, Mario. So just add some colors. It goes right in that top drawer. Thank you. Okay, we got that. Perfect. And now we'll add, I'm going to add a little bit of, I was going to add a little bit of orange. I lost that one.
Oh, it's everywhere.
Yeah, we're going to add a little bit of ember.
Here you go.
There we go.
Just don't move.
There's a little ember. That's it. Cool. Okay, there's a little orange. Now I'm just going to mix a little bit of that because I still like that dark. So I'm just going to add a little bit of blending solution just so I can have that rocking and rolling. And now we'll take this one and I'm going to drag through that. I'm going to take some of that darker there. And then up here, I still want to have a little bit of lighter elements. So I'm going to take a little bit of that patina and I'm going to just pull through that. Look at that background. Isn't that crazy? Just done. So now you can see the metallic. There's some of that alloy. That's that gold. But then you also get just those little undertones as it's drying. You'll really start to see the alloy a lot more when stuff is drying. But there's another background, like simple. Okay, so now let's jump back to this one now that it's starting to dry. So see how we've got just those layers? Let's say you don't like this. Let's say we want to just kind of play in this pile, okay? I can edit things. So let's say I don't want the brown. Well, as long as this is wet, I can take this off of my palette because you can start treating your glass as if it was a palette. Then you can look at this ink and you say, okay, you know, I like the effects or I like the looks of it. Once this ink is dry on your mat, we can go in and start picking things up. We can move things around. We can do all sorts of cool effects. So here I'm just going to take a little bit of ISO just to reactivate that ink. And instead of swiping, I'm just going to start tapping and pouncing into this ink. And see how we just totally changed the effect. So instead of that wispiness, I wanted to break up the magic and I had that ink there and I just tapped in it. So again, ISO because that's what's going to reactivate the ink and it's tapping. So it's like, notice that I'm still holding onto the paper and I'm tapping in. I'm not like pressing it down because tapping is what's going to give us all these little great bubbly effects. Even like if you're swatting a fly, see? Of course, you'd be a little bit more aggressive, I'm sure. But there you go. Another cool background. So now we have, just from that stuff, look at those backgrounds. And so different. And yet we didn't use a single tool other than a solid surface and picking stuff up. But that's the magic of what those colors of alcohol inks can do. You can just keep playing and playing and playing. That's the whole idea. The only way you're going to ever learn this medium and be comfortable with this medium is to try it yourself. Because you can watch a bazillion YouTube videos and it's never going to, I think, instill the confidence in you or really prove to you how capable you are until you do it. Because it does look intimidating. Man, when I first saw it, I was like, I am not an artist. I don't know how to pick colors. This is a hot mess. What do I do? And then once you start, you're like, oh, if you don't like it, just add a different layer, a different color. Okay, so far so good. I'm just going to do black real quick and then I'll do some lift ink. Okay, so for this we're going to just talk about pitch black. Okay, it's one color of alcohol ink, but and many other colors do this. Eggplant is notorious for that. Really, most colors have their own weird, unique properties of breaking down. But we're just going to take pitch black, and spray a little water on the back on Yupo again, and we'll do this and ISO. Let's see what we get. Okay. Can you mix the alloy and metal together? If alloy and mixative, of course. You can mix all of this stuff together. It's just understanding that mixatives will mix a little bit. So yeah, you can like mix in, say, a little bit of copper and then mixative, and then you can add an alloy of gold. So absolutely, you can totally play. All right, I'm going to take some ISO, create a nice big puddle there. I'm going to take some pitch black, and we're just going to, pitch black is a thicker ink. So just know that when you're going to drip it out, you might be like, what's going on? Do I have to shake it? You don't. It's a thicker ink. But let's just start playing around with this ink. Okay, again, this is just all in ISO. Okay, so you can see already when I say it's thick ink, because at first, with all of our inks, we want the maker to get the result that they expect when they see the color. So when you first use it, it should be that color similar to the label. But once you work it and what you do beyond that, that's where it's going to become something really wild. So now we're just going to go in and add more ISO. Could you do this with blending solution? Yes. But now because I'm adding more solvent, that color is going to start to break down incredibly, especially if I take a lot of layers. Now I can also take another piece and I can place this over the top if I want. So I can place this down, make a print. This is where I'd probably want to get out my gloves, but that will, that's after the fact. I'll come back to it. Craft pick is good because really plastic just has surface tension. And I'm just going to peel these two apart. Look at that. Look at those two prints I have. Because again, we're dealing with surface tension, so the plastic, but look at all these undertones that are showing up. These purples and magentas and just wild, wild stuff. You'll even get it, you'll get bits of blues, you're going to get bits of greens as it dries. So let's go in and just start working with this. And so far we're just talking about black. So now I'm going to dry it because you won't appreciate the color striations until it's dry. So I'm just taking the blower. Could I use a hairdryer? Yes. Do I want to move any of this color? I don't. I want all that to stay put. See how it's starting to fade and feather? Here, let me pick this up so you can... Let's watch ink dry together, shall we? But you'll see. See how that's dry? Like watch as it's drying. You're going to see it flopping around, but... See? Okay. Let's just look at this one to start. Can you see these like blue and green little lines right there? That's also in the black. The pink that's showing up, that kind of hazy craziness. Okay. What else could we do with it? Well, we already know just from watching the beginning. We can take a splatter brush. We can go right into some ISO and we can create just some fun splatters because this is just going to be bigger. We could also spray it on. So I'm just going to add some. You'll see. The thing you want to make sure when you're doing splattering and spraying and all of those other things, never do that with blending solution. Don't splatter it or spray it, okay? The reason you don't want to do this is because it has so much resin in it, you don't want this to come in contact with your eyes or ingest it, even breathing in, okay? I think that's important. We'll be talking or showing alcohol ink on canvas. I won't be showing it, but you can use alcohol ink on canvas as long as the canvas is primed. So let's talk about that real quick, why these just sit and do their little bit of magic. I'm going to let them dry completely because I like that. We're going to do some lifting. Okay. While that's drying, ooh, gosh, I wish I could pick that up. I probably will with a piece of Yupo. Hold on. See, that's the thing. Ooh, look at the back. Oh, sweet mother of magic. Look at the back. That's just lifting it up from the glass. Look at those colors. I prefer the back more than the front of this piece. Look at that background. See all those undertones? You can sit down with a bottle of black and isopropyl and have a good day. That's it. Have fun. That's it. All right, I'm letting that dry. See, you never know. This one, the back's nothing because it wasn't sitting on the glass. But see, I like that. It's a 2-for-1. Okay, I'm going to set those off the side. I could keep going with this, but honestly, I have to remember this is asked and answered. Otherwise, I would continue to play with this alcohol ink for the next 3 hours. But I see some questions about gesso and a question about canvas. So give me 2 seconds to clean this up. Would I be using this? You know I would, but not today, Tim.
Not today.
Not today. Okay. The big question. Could use it on canvas, could use it on other things. I've shown this for years, and it's very eye-opening when you understand it. We talked about this at the very beginning of the live, that alcohol inks are designed for non-porous surfaces. Non-porous surfaces, we've talked about plastic, Yupo, we can even talk about metal, so you can alcohol ink metal charms just by dripping the ink on. It couldn't be easier. You can paint it on. So let's say we wanted this butterfly to just be orange. We can just drip the ink directly on there. We can let it dry that way. You can go in with a paintbrush. You can move it around. I mean, it really could not be easier. You can add other colors to it. So we can make, one wing a different color, let it air dry. Okay. You can also take things like resin because there's other things, little plastic beads. We've talked about baubles and pearls, all this stuff from Ideology. Go back and watch any of the Halloween and Christmas where we alcohol ink bubbles to look like green bubbles in a cauldron or pearls to look like mercury glass ornaments. But any of this stuff, even like typography, anything that's going to be non-porous, you can create some beautiful inky pieces. Like this is a salvage heart. Now I didn't do anything to this. I didn't seal it. I didn't add a resin. I didn't put glossy accents. All I did was drip the ink directly on it. And when you use the ink directly from the bottle without blending solution and without isopropyl, this is where that resin really builds up. So I was just dripping, 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 and it creates this amazing shine and finish. So those are just inks dripped on a salvage heart. Now, obviously, when you drip it, you're going to get those really dark areas. If you don't want those, just dab it off before it dries or use a brush. But I wanted them because to me, it just made it look more like an agate. And that was, again, just done just like I did here. I laid the heart on here and you just start dripping your inks. That's it. Just drip it directly on there. And you can, and to move my color, so there we go. We'll do 3 different colors right now because then I'm going to still talk about this. Multitask. You just take the blower and you just move the ink around. See? Look at that. And you may need to go back and add more. Now, funny story, because I did the heart last night because I had the idea last minute. I was so excited. Listen, as makers, you guys get this, so I don't even need to explain it to you, but you're going to get it. I was so excited for how the heart turned out because the hearts are relatively new to ideology, so I hadn't really done much on alcohol ink with them. And I love the effect that I'm talking about. I'm like, look at this, it's so cool. And in my excitement, I literally blasted this blower as if I was taking someone's blood pressure who was like, they needed it taken. And I hit this so hard that the inks like literally shot upwards. Like all this ink down here, it shot, because see, you can use some force to see that color to reveal. That's what I was doing. I was just,
so cool.
But it was so much ink that just blew up. And Mario goes, what was that? And I go, oh, that's ink all over my keyboard, my Mac, it was everything. But it was funny. He remembers it. Okay, so there you go. So once you're happy, see how much ink is down there? That's what I blasted.
You blew the heart across the map.
I did. But you can always go back. So it's like, oh, I lost my yellow. Okay, we'll put some in. Oh my gosh, it's so much fun. It's so forgiving. And that's how I'm going to get like this resin effect. Ooh, I like that. And then you could even hit it with like some rubbing alcohol to get even more.
Let's do it there.
No.
Ooh.
Oh, see that? I did that just for you. Now I'm just making a hot mess of this one. That's okay. If you don't like something, because I probably won't like this heart when it's done, but who knows? I'm getting that little purple. You can just let it. Oh, I actually do love that. You can just clean it off with sanitizer and start over. Ooh, but I'm going to add some blue. Thanks, Mario. That kind of muck actually made something really cool. Okay, back to this. Anytime you have a non-porous surface that's going to be slick, you use the inks as is. But let's say you wanted to put your inks on a typically porous surface. I saw the question about canvas. Maybe it's an art journal. Maybe it's a wood box. Maybe it's a piece of chipboard or etc. This is Stampers Anonymous, etc., which is a hard paper board. All you need to do is seal that surface and then it's alcohol inkable. However, what you choose to seal it with is going to work differently with the inks. So I can't just say like, yeah, use this, it's going to be great. And I can't say don't use this because it doesn't work. These all work. So the first one is going to be gesso. Now gesso, let's see, where's my little bucket of stuff?
This?
No, I have it somewhere. I was so prepared.
Not there, not there.
It's a whole stack of jars. Okay, Holtz. No. Here it is. Because I wanted visual. Dina Wakley white gesso. If you gesso, is it alcohol inkable? Absolutely. So gesso made it perfect where you can apply it and once it dries, so you've sealed the surface, this is alcohol ink with a blower where it's moving around, ISO, blending solution, whatever. See what happens when the ink is not on that surface? It just soaks right in. That's where the ink tool, tap, tap, tap. So gesso, great results. Collage medium. So let's say you wanted to seal it with collage medium. You could, but collage medium, in my opinion, was very porous. It reacted almost like glossy cardstock. So even though the ink flowed for a little bit, when I went to add a second layer, it didn't give me the same movement as gesso did. It tended to grab on the ink a little bit more. So I suppose if you were going to put it on and do like one layer of ink, you would be fine. But any more than that, I wouldn't really say collage medium is your jam. And then you have standards, acrylic paint. I use distress paint, but it's nothing significant with distress of why it worked. So this is white acrylic paint, very similar to gesso. However, you can see that my color got a little pinkish purple, and that little pinkish purple created a muck. And that probably had something to do with the colorant or or titanium dioxide in this paint, whereas gesso is more true. I saw a question about if this was water-based, wouldn't it get gooey? This is dry, and collage medium, once it's dry, it is waterproof. So the solvent didn't make it gooey again. But some mediums it does. It will do that to like resist spray or glossy accents. But collage medium, it didn't make it gooey at all. See, even my brush strokes are still there. So anyway, just beware when you're doing white paint that if you're getting some funky colors, but you might love that. If you want a true color, gesso is still the jam. But then metallics. Metallic is also cool. So this is just silver metallic. And now it gives that paint, see, a metallic sheen. Because that paint is making that ink look metallic. So could you use it on canvas? Yes. A journal? Yes. Wood? Yes. All those things. But you can apply some type of medium to seal that surface, which is really cool. Which brings me to some other surfaces. Let me grab that. There are also some specialty surfaces in the alcohol ink line. There's alcohol ink sparkle, and there is alcohol ink brush silver. Now you might look at these and be like, oh, okay, I have sparkly cardstock and metallic cardstock. Yes, I'm sure. But these are designed to work with alcohol ink and not let the ink permeate through it as quick as standard cardstock. I'm not saying don't try your metallics. I'm saying that not all metallic cardstocks are designed to handle solvent. These are. So this one is going to give you a beautiful metallic finish with your inks. Okay, it's that brush silver. This one is sparkly, and the camera will never pick up sparkle the same way it never picks up mica. But this is, I wouldn't say it's glittery. I would just say it's sparkly. It does look like glitter, but really, really tiny.
It kind of shows.
It's beautiful. So those are some specialties if you want to create some cool looks. I absolutely love that. Okay. Okay, let's move on from surfaces. Oh, see that heart it ended up turning out pretty cool.
Welcome.
Okay, Maria's like, you're welcome. So metals, yes. Resins, yes. Glass bottles, yes. All those things. I mean, if you've been watching videos long enough, you know that I'm a huge fan of colorizing mica flakes and glitter. So these are synthetic mica flakes that I do with Ranger, and this is a clear, almost sugary glitter. And I've done a bazillion videos on that, so I won't do it in Asked and Answered, but just so you can see, you can create all these colors of glitter from rock candy and tinting it with alcohol ink. And it's all dry glitter. You can also create beautiful colors of mica flakes. So, you know, just imagine like for spring and you wanted the lightest pink mica flakes. And they're still, yeah, they're beautiful. And that's just done using the mica flakes and alcohol ink. And once they're colored, you know, you can use them for shaker cards, you can do all that, but you get to totally customize that, even down to like gray or black for Halloween. It's fun. So you can do that to tiny glass beads, all sorts of shaker things. Once you get into the alcohol ink world, honestly, nothing is safe. It becomes crazy. Okay, let me clean some of this stuff off. We're gonna go back to lift ink, I think it was. How are we doing on the chat? I'm trying to look. What tin is that? What tin is that? This tin that holds the storage jars, it's just called a distressed storage tin now, but it was the crayon tin. But we renamed it just the distressed storage tin, and it fits 12 of the distressed jars. And you can have the jars laying down, or they also fit standing up if you're gonna like label the top, maybe you're gonna keep embellishments in it. So there you go, Kathy. Okay. See, that's what this is all about, asking. I just feel like I'm so excited about it that I'm not answering enough questions. Am I, Mario? Are you seeing? Okay.
Hey, you're one guy.
I know, but I'm
You're
trying
one
to.
guy, you're demoing,
I'm trying to
working through
hit the
the code,
agenda.
you're looking at
Does
it.
alcohol ink leave a stickiness? Alcohol ink will leave a stickiness if you put too much of it on, because it is a resin. So if you're piling it on, you could get a stickiness in the resin, and if you heat dry it, you'll tend to get a stickiness because the resin doesn't cure the way it does when it air dries. It tends to stay a little tacky. So you have options. You can just go and add more ink or knock it down with some isopropyl. Or if you have any type of metal leafing or foil, you can touch that on the sticky resin and it will actually adhere the foil or leafing, which is good. I keep seeing the question about photo paper, which I have answered at the beginning. You just need to try it. But yes, it would work on any kind of non-porous paper. So there you go. Should you seal it with something? Talked about that at the beginning. I'm not much of a sealer, so I don't seal my inks. If you're interested in, that's actually really cool as it's drying. If you're interested in learning about sealing, I would suggest the alcohol ink community, because they're selling their artwork. So they want their paintings and all that sealed. But in a typical environment like this, be that on that resin or on the metal or on these backgrounds, there is no need to seal it. No. Cool.
You want me to start singing?
Could use collage medium. Oh, we don't talk about sealing. Can use collage medium on top or without moving the ink. Yes, collage medium is water-based. So a water-based top coat will not react the ink. But still, it has other resins in it, so I still wouldn't recommend overworking it because it will start to eat into your color. Most of the time when they're sealing, people like to use a light spray, even though it's a solvent, but you keep your distance and you can build up sealing. So there you go. Okay. Will alcohol ink work on texture paste? Good question. I'll talk about that. Great segue. Thanks for that question. Let's talk about texture paste. Okay. Texture paste. I have some over here. I'm just trying to see where I put them. Okay. And again, these are done in previous videos, so I think that's really important to understand if you want to watch the demo on this. But this is asked and answered, so I can answer this just by talking about it. So there are many things that you can use that work as a great resist or effect with alcohol ink. If you use alcohol ink on regular texture paste is matte and it's like paper, so it won't do anything cool, okay? Because if you add the ink on texture paste, it's going to soak in really dark and it's not going to move. However, we have a lot of different translucent texture paste. There is texture paste translucent, which is just a gloss paste. There's translucent crackle, which is a gloss paste that cracks. And we introduced texture paste sparkle, which is a gloss paste with little flecks of metallic glitter in there. All of these translucent pastes can go through a stencil and you can use it on top of alcohol ink and behind it. So let's talk about the paste real quick. So let's say I wanted to take one of the backgrounds I did. Let's just pick one of these. Okay, maybe we'll just do this one because it's here. It's the first one in my reach. Let me just grab a stencil. I got a lot of different things with stencils as well that I can show you. Let's see, maybe I want to do, let's do a honeycomb. Okay. So I don't want my paper to move, so I'm just going to spritz a little bit of water. This was, again, one of the Yupo backgrounds that we did earlier. I'll take a stencil, I'll take a palette knife, and let's just do texture paste translucent. Okay. So there we go. All of these have been Yupo. All right. So texture paste translucent is kind of like yogurt. That's really the best way to describe its consistency. Okay. I'm just going to place this down and I'm just going to spread this through in a couple of areas. Now it goes on white, so do not freak because especially if you've spent time on a background or you're like, oh my gosh, but I didn't want to ruin that. It'll dry clear. Okay, I'm spreading it with a palette knife, so I'm spreading it through the stencil, but then I'm skimming off the excess. What you see is what you get. So it is a texture paste, so if you leave some kind of cool palette drags in there like that, it's going to dry like that, which is going to be exactly what I need. Okay, I'm going to take that paste, I'm going to kind of scrape it, make sure it's inside the jar. This can clean off with water. I have a tray of water off to the side. Clean off my palette knife when I dipped it in. This, put the lid on, and if you've watched any lives this year, you know I'm a huge fan of rubber bands around that seam of my jars, and anyone that's tried it, I hope you were as successful as I am with my mediums lasting longer. Now, dismount. I'm just going to go in with a pick again, and I'm going to just lift my stencil up because my paper is stuck there with water. This just goes in water as well to clean off that paste, and we're going to let this dry. So I'm just going to move it out of the way. So there's my paste as it's drying. Hopefully we can get this to dry before the end of the live, but who's to say if it's going to work. But I'll put it over here for now. I don't think it's not totally warm enough here yet. Although if we had a hot day yesterday, like the 80s. Okay, anyway, once it dries, it's going to trap the color underneath and then we can spray over the top of it. So this is texture paste. This one, again, both of these demos have been done in previous ones, which I love. This one, Distress Resist Spray. You can also put resist spray through a stencil and it will act as a great resist, but it gives you a completely different look than texture paste. It gives you a much glossier wet look, but you can use texture paste, translucent, and resist spray over both of it. So it's really, really good. Okay, why not just make a better container for the medium? That makes me laugh. But But it is a better container. But tell me a better one that seals up and never mind. Just I like rolled my eyes out loud. Okay, cool. Let's move on to lift ink, because I wanted to get into lift ink because I find that it's pretty magical. Okay, when it comes to using lift ink, we can do it on a lot of different things. So here's just a background I did. This is very similar to the one that I demoed at the beginning, but instead of just focusing a small amount, it was really just taking a sheet of Yupo, cutting it in half long ways, and then adding solvent across, and just using more solvent, because more rubbing alcohol, more isopropyl gave me that wispy kind of look on there, which was nice. This was just a fun idea about cleaning up, you know, where I actually dripped the inks on my glass mat with intention, and then just took my paper and drug through those colors, added some other colors and drug through that. So it's very much things that we've done in this demo already. It was just about when you understand the technique, it's about understanding the whole thing where it comes into play of, okay, well, I understand how inks move, but what if I want more movement or more translucent look under there? Well, that's more ISO or blending solution. Oh, I love the drag. Okay, well, the drag doesn't always have to be this mixy sludge. It can be intentional and create some cool effects, like looks like a torn piece of paper just because of how the ink's played. So that's really fun. But lift ink, what that is, it is an ink and a re-inker. So it's an ink pad and it has a re-inker as well that is designed to lift alcohol ink off of a non-porous surface. Now, the thing to remember about lift ink, because I know we've talked about a lot of paper so far, is that if you go back to that side-by-side comparison when I talked about how Yupo allows the inks to play and float, but alcohol ink cardstock, aka gloss cardstock, doesn't. See how it just soaks it up? Lift ink does not perform well on alcohol ink cardstock or glossy cardstock. It doesn't lift off well. To get all these lift effects, they've all been done on Yupo, okay? Or again, something synthetic, something plastic. So here you can see, and I'll demo this real quick because I think seeing is believing on that. It's pretty amazing. That you can use a lot of different types of stamps, even detailed stamps, which you wouldn't think you could. They work great with this technique. So here, this is this image, this stamped image, that is actually lifted. It's lifted off of that background, and it creates almost like a ghost effect. It's really beautiful when it comes to working with this. I think that's really nice to be able to lift off that background. You can use more detailed stamps. So here's one where it's got a lot of line detail. And we'll talk about not only lifting, but you can also then stamp with it. So that's kind of a before and after. I'm getting ahead of myself. You can also use it through a stencil. Now through a stencil, that's just going to be a little lift ink and a mini blending tool. So we can do some of that. But then you can also create some really cool backgrounds using lift ink and a different stamp choice. So let me grab both of these. Here's some really cool stamps that I did with Stampers Anonymous. One is called Bubbles, which just looks like a bunch of bubbles, and it's just a massive stamp. And this one is Shattered, which really looks like crackle or almost webbing, like spray webbing. It has a lot of great effects. But these are great for lifting as well, because when you look at this background and you see kind of this cellular look, okay, or kind of, you know, ocean or tides, you're like, wow, that's really wild. Well, that's done with lift ink and this stamp, okay? So it creates that look of like, oh, how did you get those big drips of ink? It really wasn't. It was an inked background that we lifted the bubbles, okay? So let's do a lift real quick. The thing to know about using lift ink is that your stamp needs to be clean. And when I say clean, it means if you have a lot of black ink, that's not going to be good because it will transfer to your lift ink. You need to clean your stamp. Clean it with a stamp cleaner of some type, like maybe you want to use Archival cleaner, or, you know, let's see, what do I want to do? I'll use this one. I'll clean it. Okay, this one was already clean, but hey, I'll clean. So I'm going to use Archival cleaner. You can use whatever stamp cleaner you want. This has a felt top. This is not a scrubby top, by the way. This is just an applicator top. So you need to dab it on there. If you scrub your stamp with it, well, you'll know because you've probably already torn off the fabric. It still works, but just keep that in mind that it's really just designed to dab that cleaner onto the stamp. Then take some type of cloth. Maybe it's going to be a stamp chamois or some type of scrub, and you're going to clean this off. Now, depending on how well you clean your stamps, I am not known for cleaning my stamps. I don't like to clean my stamps, but I'll clean my stamps if I need to use it for a technique. So this one probably needs a couple passes just to break through as much of that archival as possible. See, there's still black coming off, and that's going to be good enough. Once I'm done cleaning a stamp with cleaner, I go in with some water because I want to rinse off that cleaner. Stamp cleaners all contain a conditioner, and it leaves some oil residue on there, and I just don't like that on my stamp. Okay, so once I've cleaned that off with the towel, then I'm going to go in and just dry my stamp real quick, and we'll use that one for lifting. Okay. Question, is alcohol ink and archival safe for clear? Yes, you can use archival for that. You're not really stamping with alcohol ink, or you shouldn't be. Some people do, but I don't really put alcohol ink on my stamps, rubber or clear. So, but archival, absolutely. Lift ink, yes, also okay for clear stamps. Okay, good questions. So, we're going to use that one. Let's get a block. Oh, Snapdragon. Okay. Here we go. I'm just throwing stuff everywhere because I didn't.
There you go.
Oh, this block will be fine. I was going to use a different one. I'm like, no, we'll just use this big one. We can also use a stamp tool or anything like that, but I don't have space to get out the platform. Okay, there we go. The background. What background are we going to do? Let's lift this one from, gosh, this is, see, this is the problem. When you start making, you're like, oh, this is gross. This is okay. Look at how cool that one is, guys. Remember, that's the back of that. You might look and be like, oh, I don't really like it. But then you don't want to sacrifice it because all of a sudden you fall in love with it. It's funny how we are as makers. Like we get all judgy McJudge when we're doing something, but then when you walk away from it for a little bit and you come back to it, before you know it, it's like everything you did is a masterpiece. Anyone else have that? See, it's about getting out of our head. Okay, I'm going to use this one. I think this is going to be kind of a cool, smoky, hazy, negative look. So I'm going to take this stamp. I'm going to take my lift ink, and I'm just going to ink up my stamp. So lift ink is clear. So if your pad is still white, that means you're doing a really good job cleaning your stamps. If it starts getting stained or black or pink or whatever, it's still going to work fine. Don't worry about it. It really will. Okay. I'm going to ink that up. Then I'm going to take my stamp and I'm going to position it. Let's see. I think I'm going to go kind of all over the place. So I'll put it right there. I'm going to stamp with purpose, meaning I'm just going to use a little pressure, but I don't want a ton of it because I don't want this to slide across. The lift ink is a little slickery. And then when I stamp, I also want to hold it here for just a second. Not with pressure, just keep my stamp there because that's what's going to start working through that alcohol ink. Then I'm going to lift off my stamp. Okay, I'm going to set this aside. I'm not going to do anything to this yet. We'll come back to it. Now we've got lift ink on there. So I've talked about this for years. Viva is a brand of paper towels that are almost cloth-like. And whenever I do lift, I will only lift with Viva. This is not sponsored. I don't work for Viva. But it is a different kind because it's very almost like a cloth. So if you have a paper towel that's almost cloth-like, it's going to give you a better lift than a cheaper paper towel with a weird texture. I'm just telling you that, okay? But again, use what you have. If you don't have Viva, you can still lift with a standard paper towel. Okay, I'm going to place this down over the top first, and I'm going to press this. Now, I've seen Pollicini, she uses a brayer for this step. You could totally do that as well, because we want to get the bulk of the lift off first without moving it around. Meaning, if you started scrubbing over the whole thing, you're really going to muck this up. But a brayer, that's also a good option to brayer over the paper towel. Okay, so that's going to take off our first layer of lift, and you can already slightly see this coming through. It's going to start developing right before your eyes. The only way to get lift ink to work is you have to do the lifting. The ink is there doing its job, but you've got to actually physically take it off. Okay, so now I'm going to take this, and using this paper towel, I'm going to start dabbing. Then I'm going to move to a clean part of the paper towel, dab again, clean part of the paper towel, because what we're doing is we are lifting off the alcohol ink, and it's super important that we are using a clean part of that paper towel each time to do it. Now, depending on your backgrounds though, if you've done a lot of ink, and you're going to see when I pick this up, like how much black was here, remember how dark it was when we first started? You might want to go in with a second lift I don't like to do that because I like to get what I get. If I wanted this to be a white image, I would have just stamped and embossed in white because we already talked about embossing earlier. Remember embossing in black? I would emboss in white. The purpose of lift is to create almost that ghosty look. So I'm good with you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. Could you use a rag or an old t-shirt? You can use anything that's going to be porous enough to get this ink off, but something soft like that would be your best bet. Once I lift this off and I don't see any more color coming, then I am just going to take that paper towel and kind of gently buff off any excess. And that to me is what's going to bring everything into focus. Okay. So let me pick this up and that's what we have. You see that image? Isn't that cool? So obviously where it's darker, you notice more contrast, and where it's light, it kind of fades out, but I dig that. I absolutely love that. And that's what creates the effect. So it's super simple to do. It's just about placing it down and lifting it off. Okay, now there's other things that lift ink can do, and it just depends on what you have. By lifting off the alcohol ink, there is alcohol ink on the stamp. However, there is a barrier of lift ink between the stamp and the alcohol ink, right? Because the alcohol ink was dry, we inked up the stamp with lift, and we took it off. So you could clean this if you want, or you can often get this effect, which is stamping with whatever you lifted off. Now this is something you don't have to do. This is really what the product is designed to do. It did its job, it's lifting. But this is a cool thing to note is that whenever you lift, that ink, exactly how you took it off, remained on the stamp. And depending on your colors, you can get some really cool effects. I don't have high hopes for this one, but I'm going to show you anyway. This is where glossy cardstock actually comes into play, because to get the best release of that ink, the more porous the paper is, the better the result. So I've tried to take this stamp and use it on Yupo, and it doesn't pull off the ink the way gloss cardstock will. So I'm just going to press it down, and you can do this at any time because until you clean it, that alcohol ink was already dry and that lift ink is kind of trapped. So I'm just going to press that, and there we go. I like that. But you can see exactly the mirrored effect, meaning why is it darker right here? Well, because it was darker right here. Why is it darker here? It was darker here. Why is it lighter here? It's lighter here. Why it's got that like light glow, light glow. But what's cool about this is now permanent. This image is permanent, so you can put distress over it, oxide, you can do whatever. I wouldn't alcohol ink over this, but any of your water-based inks or watercolor works great on glossy paper. Distress ink and oxide is beautiful, so you can do your blend, and this is now permanent because we stamped in alcohol ink. Now, to clean this off, I just go with my stamp cleaner and do that. So, do you have to do that second generation, you know, where you're stamping it off? No, you could just clean it off and go about your day. But it's just something to know that, you know, sometimes you lift from a cool background, you're like, oh, I wish I could stamp it like that. Well, you could. You could. All right. So next, let's just show you what you can do from a stencil aspect. I'm going to move these out of the way. Other things to keep in mind from lifting. Any images like this, like leaf prints, these are great for lifting because it lifts just like that kind of print that you would get. So any cool watercolor stamps or leaf prints, these are wonderful for lifting because you get that fossilized look. Just keep that in mind for stamps. It's really great. Okay. If you're not using a stamp, we can also create some effect with a stencil. So let's just pick a different background. Let's do this one. It's pinky pretty. We can take any kind of stencil we want. I'll just take this small one. It's pretty dirty. And we're going to go in with a lift ink re-inker. I'm totally trying to watch the chat, Mario, so if I miss a question, please point it out.
I do see what was the name of the last stamp you used, but I don't know which one you last used.
Oh, the stamp name? That's called Botanic Collage. It's CMS 447 was that stamp. Okay, here I'm going to use a blending tool with foam. Now this is a tiny blending tool, much smaller than the mini blending tool, but if you have any kind of foam, it's going to work. But you want to do this with foam and not felt, okay? Because we need to get in the stencil, and the felt isn't squishy enough to get the ink down when we need it. So you can use a dome foam, you can use a makeup sponge, you can use whatever you want. You could even use your ink blending brush, but now you're going to have to clean this re-inker off of it. So what I'm going to do is, instead of using the ink pad, because there's not enough ink for this particular technique, I mean, you'd really have to juice it up. You could if that's all you had, so don't think that you can't do it this way. But if you have a re-inker, there's no reason of like drying out your lip ink pad. Just use that. It's, like I said, very glycerin-y. I just put a little bit on there. I'm going to take the foam. I'm going to run it through that whole drip just to kind of get lip ink in there. I don't want this saturated. I don't want it soaking wet, but I want to make sure the lip ink is on there. Lip ink is very greasy, so it has an open time of many minutes, 10, 15 minutes. So don't think you're in like a race. I'm going to place a stencil down. This is, again, alcohol ink background that we did earlier. Remember, those were the 3 different colors. Okay, it's totally dry. I'll start up here at the top. I'm going to place a stencil down. I'm going to take that lip ink and I'm just going to dab through the stencil. I'm not rubbing, I'm just dabbing, okay, because I don't want to drag that anywhere. You can see that ink transfers. Okay, that's why I like to use a foam versus the pad, because if I went back into my ink pad to get more ink, I would be transferring pink back to that ink pad. I'm going to move my stencil. I'll just bring it down on the end. Don't worry about this, it's not going anywhere. And we're going to do the same thing. Just going to pounce a little bit here, and I'm just kind of creating a fragment, really. I'm not trying to do a whole overall thing. Again, pounce, pounce, pounce. No surprise, it's lifting that as well. This I can just clean off with water, so I'm just going to put it in my pan of water. This, if you have that, you can actually keep this in a bag, and it could be a dedicated lift ink foam if you wanted it to. Nothing's going to happen. But we still have to lift it. So always remember, when you're using lift ink or you're using the lift re-inker, you still have to do the lifting. The ink is there. It's not going to lift as it dries. So I'm going to go in just like before, start with a paper towel, do a print, or if you don't like to do a print because you don't think that's going to work well, Paula's trick with just taking a brayer, whatever's going to work for you. Whoa, that's why I don't have a brayer. I'm going to pick that up. There's that print. Now we're just going to go in and dab. So just like what we did with the stamps. It's a hot mess around here, guys. You should see how I work. When I'm doing a live, like, I have a big space. I have a room like everyone else, but when it comes to creating, you create in the smallest amount of space. All right, so I'm doing the same thing. I'm lift, and I'm looking at the paper towel. So see how I get a little pink, a little yellow? So sometimes you have to go over it several times until you see there's even more pink, until you don't see a lot of ink before you rub over the top of it, because if you wipe over it right away, it's going to just smear. Is the lift ink made of resin? I'm not sure what the lift ink is made of. I'm sure that's probably a proprietary secret from the lab, but I don't know. It's magical. It's magical stuff, I'll tell you that. It's very cool. It's really slippery, but I'm sure if you contact a ranger, they might be able to give you information if you needed it. Okay, so I think I got the bulk of it. Just going to take that.
You don't need that for everything.
No, I don't. Thanks. I'm just going to wipe that off. Just kind of clean the rest of that off. And there we go. Take a look at that. So isn't that cool? So lifting through a stencil, it made those colors light, because that's where we lifted. We lifted the inside parts. The outside where that stencil was, it stayed darker. But cool. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah? There you go. That is the magic of lifting. And you can play, like, you can lift off of vellum, you can lift off of, this is translucent Yupo, you can lift off of transparencies, you can lift off of metal foil sheets. So it's cool. It just takes, you just have to remember the whole things of, like, you got to put the lift down, you got to first take off the bulk layer, then you got to dab, 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 then you buff it off. So I think once you get the hang of it, you'll totally remember all of the elements of using lift ink. Great, great fun. Okay, let's keep going. Let's see what else I have. Okay, let's talk about some other things for backgrounds, and then I'll even talk about putting some elements together. I'm still watching the chat. Let's see, the comments have started to kind of slow down. What chemical causes the lift? I don't know the chemical that causes it. Maybe that's more of a ranger question. I'm not sure what in that formulation is causing it to lift, but it's not a solvent though. I know that because a solvent would dry. It definitely has some oil in it, which is cool. Okay.
Secret.
Okay. Well, I mean, most things are proprietary. Then I can be like, here's the formulation for Coca-Cola. Okay. Here we go. Yeah. All right, let's move these out of the way. I'm still watching the chat, but really I think the chat has started to, or the questions have started to slow down. But okay, that means I'm doing an okay job. let's
You
talk.
are doing a great job.
Oh, thanks, Mario. Oh my, there's ink splatters everywhere. Let's talk about, let's see, my mat's pretty straight. Okay. So let's just talk about what you can do with some of the backgrounds. So I think that's good. Okay. And like I said, the videos on my YouTube channel and on timholtz.com go into way more depth of any technique, like where we do the technique in repetition, even down to how you make a swatch. So this is all about asked and answered, okay? So can you lift by putting alcohol on your stamp or stamp through a stencil? Alcohol, well that's not really lifting, that's just putting, you can put alcohol through a stencil, yes, it's just, it won't give you detail, it would just look, so you could spray through a stencil and it would, but it's going to bleed under the stencil. But let's talk about a stencil real quick. Can you use inks on shrink plastic? Is plastic non-porous? Yes, then yes. And yes, if you shrink it, the colors will be more intense. But yes, you can do that. Let's talk about stencils. I've done this technique in detail as well about alcohol inking a stencil itself. You need to understand though that if you decide to do this technique, your stencil will be forever inked because it will stain this plastic, but I think your stencil is still going to work great. It's just going to be a different color, which I love. So this is taking Yupo, and these are ones that I've already done because you can get many generations of prints out of it. That's what I'm going to show you, but I prepared it ahead of time because you have to let it dry, and it takes like 30 minutes to an hour for it to dry, okay? So what you can do is you can place a stencil. Let me line it up just so I have it. Let's see, where is it? That's this one. Okay, here we go. You place a stencil down onto Yupo, and again, this is demoed in earlier videos. You spray the back of your stencil with alcohol so you get the surface tension, lay it on Yupo, and you drip your inks in through your stencil, and you move the inks around with a glove on your hand. Otherwise, you're going to stain your fingers like crazy. And you let it dry. I have one dry. We're going to do the reveal together. Once it dries, so it has to dry, like I said, 30 minutes to an hour. Once you do that and you peel this off, this is what you end up getting. You get a beautiful alcohol inked tile pattern because remember the inks have resin, so see how it's so shiny and pretty? I love that. And because we sprayed the back with a little alcohol ink, we got the surface tension so the inks didn't really soak underneath. But then you have ink all over your stencil. You can spray your stencil with alcohol to reactivate this and then actually place the stencil down on another piece of Yupo, let it dry for 30 minutes or so, lift it off, and actually stamp with whatever is left on your stencil. Now, some designs are better than others. This one was just like, meh. I wouldn't know this is lace. This looks kind of cellular. But this one, because it was a bold flourish, it just kept going and going. And because I used so much, I was able to do that print. I let it dry. I lifted up. There was still more ink on the stencil. I sprayed it again. I pressed it again. Let it dry. There was still more ink. I did it again. So you can often do that until there's no ink left on the stencil. This one, this is on there. But when we peel this off, this is the effect that this one created. I love this, but I haven't printed with this one. So we're going to print that in the live. Isn't that cool? Look at that detail. It's glorious. So, so good. Okay. I don't know the name of that flourish because I don't have that stencil out. So you can either check on the index or if somebody knows, that would be great. But I don't. If Stampers Anonymous is here, they would know what that is in a heartbeat. Okay. So for this one, because the stencil would be a number, I think. All right. I'm going to take just a piece of parchment paper for this. I'm going to take a piece of Yupo. Remember, this is the one that it was on my background. We dripped all the inks, we let it dry, but now there's ink all over the stencil. We're going to print with it. So it doesn't matter how long you waited. I'm going to take isopropyl. I'm going to spray it just off camera because I don't want iso all over this, but I'll show you before I place it down. So I've sprayed a generous amount, so my stencil looks pretty wet. And then I'm going to place the ink side down over this background. And this is where you're going to take a glove. So I'm just going to put a glove on because the ink could come through when you're doing a print. And we're creating a print. So we're just creating pressure. Now while that's down, I also like to take just a little bit of ISO and go over the whole thing. Just in case there's a little bit of dried ink that starts feathering away from that stencil design. And we're going to try to let that sit there without really moving it. Now you can keep playing with this. I mean, this is where it gets really fun, but you got to be fairly gentle with this because you don't want it to move. But playing around with that solvent, you're going to create some cool effects, and you'll start getting ink on your hands because, believe it or not, there's ink coming off of that stencil. That's why having a glove is cool. Could you use a tool, a blending tool, a brush? You can use all of those things. But see, as I work this, I'm starting to get some of that color kind of seeping out a little bit into that area. Just because I mean, you could leave it stark white. You don't have to do this step. And when it starts getting a little sticky, you can spray that down, and we can push that into the stencil as well. So this one is just more about, you know, whether you just place it down and walk away or you just kind of print with it. But you still want this to dry. So I'm going to let that dry for a bit. I'm going to take this off, but that's where when I say a gloved hand, like it actually does matter. Okay. Will it lift off oxide? No, it's alcohol lifting. So it's designed to lift alcohol inks only. There we go. Mario, can I hand this to you?
Sure.
Actually, no, I'm going to leave it right here because if I do, I'll forget it. So I'll leave it here. Thanks. Change my mind. Okay, so that was just using it through a stencil, but the same idea if you wanted to spray. Perfect. I'm going to set those aside. Okay, let's talk about some other things for backgrounds. And then we're going to even get into some card ideas because one of the things that I think is important in this Asked and Answered is what do you do with the background? Household products, whether you have bubble wrap, whether you have, and if you're into gel printing, you know a lot of this stuff. You can use it for alcohol ink as well. Plastic wrap is also a cool thing. Because these are plastic, we can use them as tools. So what you can do is, let's say we have like this piece of bubble wrap. Let's take a background. Let's see, how many see, as much as I made, it's like I'm going through them really quick. I can do this one. I like this one. I'm going to do this one. So this is the back of this, but it doesn't really matter because I'll use the other side. Just going to take a bit of bubble wrap, and we're going to use, just going to take a little piece of it. You can use a whole sheet of it. It's completely up to you how you want to use it, but I just want to show you some quick tricks of how you can use this as I watch for questions. And Mario, again, if you see questions, let me know. So I can take bubble wrap, and you can dip it into alcohol ink and stamp with it, which I will, or you can also just spray it with some isopropyl and you can print with it. So it's just about like, it's like using it as a stamp really, but we can just let that dry and you can create these cool cells with bubble wrap. You can also place the bubble wrap down, let it dry completely and peel it off. If you do that, these are some of the effects that you'll get. And that, again, this is just an alcohol inked background and putting bubble wrap down. Okay. So this one is stamping like I just did. This one is stamping and letting it dry because the longer it sits, you'll get these really cool defined outer rings, but it's not bad. Creates a neat effect. And again, if you have a color, so let's just take this, we're going to dry this off so it doesn't have all the ISO on it. You could go in with a color. So let's say we wanted to add some, because remember this is pitch black, but let's say we wanted to add some, I don't know, some patina bubbles. I'll just take alcohol ink patina. It could be other colors of that. You can take just a piece of bubble wrap and you're just going to tap that in there and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to have some of that kind of patina over the top. Just going to press that down for a second just so it makes contact and then lift it off. And we're going to let that dry. And as it dries, you can see that those bubbles will start having the color. And the lighter you are, and obviously the drier your ink becomes, the better. So you can even just a little tippy tap, take that off. And we can let it dry. We can use a blower just to help it dry, just so you guys get the idea. But see, ISO is going to remove the color, but alcohol ink will add the color. Okay, that's it. And remember, this is all alcohol ink. So let's say you're like, oh gosh, I don't like that, which I don't. Okay, I've got ink down there. I added a little ISO to reactivate it, and whoop, I'm going to just swipe through it. So I'll put that down. I'll even put in a little bit more. Yeah, you don't overthink the ink. That's, I think, the most important thing to remember about working with alcohol ink is that if you just have the chance of just kind of playing with it. Let's see, let's drag this way. Gone, but my bubbles are still there.
It's like a
So
dry erase board.
it really is. It's a creative dry erase board. You can kind of play around with it. So just things to note. Bubble wrap is good. Another fun one, I'll talk about plastic wrap because I did this one. I can't wait to see the reveal. I almost cheated this morning, but I didn't. Okay, this is an alcohol inked background. So imagine we have a background already done. You spritz it with alcohol, and again, the other videos go more in depth from start to finish. Then you take a piece of plastic wrap, you lay it down. So when you ISO the background, you don't hose it down. You just give it like a couple of sprays. You'll see the ink start to move. You place the plastic wrap down, you give it a couple of little scrunchies with your finger. See that? So in other words, we don't want to lay it down flat. We want the wrinkles and whatever, and you let it dry, preferably overnight, because you're kind of, remember plastic wrap is designed to seal something. So we need the air to get under there and dry it. I don't know how it does, but it does. Then it's going to be stuck together like this one is. And then after it dries overnight, which this one did, you just peel it off and you see what you get. See that resin? So yes, you have ink here. I guess you could print it or do something with it. I'm not. But this is what we're left with.
That is cool.
Isn't that wild? So, I mean, you could argue like, well, I could do that with like a stamp. Like, yeah, if you had a stamp that's like it, but it's just the serendipityness of whatever the plastic wrap does, it pulls off color. I don't know. I just think it's so wild. I mean, even those little dots, those were obviously the alcohol when I sprayed it, they were bubbles, but because they were trapped under the plastic wrap, they got bigger. But that's just wild. I think that's really cool on a piece of Yupo. So you see, again, the back. That's why I love working on the glass mat. Look, the back that's beautiful. Anyway, just something fun that you could do with plastic wrap that you probably wouldn't think to do. It's a pretty neat effect. But can you see here, people were asking about like the shiny. So this, I'm going to say it's a little tacky, but it's not transferring any color. But if you didn't like that shiny resin, I mean, that's the whole thing of alcohol ink. They have resin in them for a reason, to keep that shine. But if you didn't like that, you could certainly try to go over it with something to kind of knock that down. That's really cool. Okay, so let's just talk about what you can do with alcohol inks, and we're going to wrap this up because I'm looking and I see all the questions are pretty. I think I've answered most of them, that's a good thing. But of course, if you still have any that we haven't covered, feel free to ask. But if you came in late and you have questions, well, that's on you. Rewatch, you'll be able to see it. Okay, here we go. So what do you do with all these things, right? The thing about alcohol ink, as I mentioned at the beginning, you want to play. And that's my most important advice to you is get yourself some surfaces and don't be afraid to play. Don't be afraid to take the time. I'm looking at this background. See, our paste isn't totally dry yet. I wish it was, but it's not. It's drying, but still white. But give yourself permission to just play, and you can do some backgrounds one day, you can do lift ink another day, you can do stenciling. I mean, you can do whatever it is that is inspiring you to do. I think that's what makes working with this so fun, because if you don't have any agenda, meaning you don't have any color palette in mind or anything specific, you can't be disappointed because you're just going to be playing. You're just going to create. I see a question about can you use it on. Yep, that's where I'm going. Okay. Thank you. Can you use it on a gel plate? Yes, you can use alcohol ink on gel plate. It's really cool. Let's see. How did you do it before the white underneath to see the colors? I worked on the white section of the black mat. Someone asked, how did I use alcohol inks on the black mat? The black mat had that white area of glass when you peel off the sheet. That's where I worked most of the time for painting and effects. But if you do backgrounds, you'll see my other videos. I did the backgrounds right over black because you get what you get and you don't fit, but that's it. So I am going to talk about die cutting next. But someone asked about gel plate. Yes. So let's talk about die cutting, because that's where things, for me as a maker, we've already talked about stamping on it. We've already talked about doing stencils, but what can you do with backgrounds? Well, the thing to know about Yupo is it is die cuttable. So you can take your thin dies and you can die cut through Yupo. Now, when I talk about die cutting through Yupo, it is important to remember that I'm specifically talking about the standard Yupo and not Yupo heavy stock. Yupo heavy stock will not cut with thin dies. You need a thicker steel rule die, but any of your thin dies, you can cut Yupo, and you don't need I mean, depending on your die, I'm going to say you don't need a precision base plate or anything. You just need to kind of go for it. But I did a background. So remember that kind of cleanup background that I talked about? These were cool. So could this have been a card panel? Yes. Could I have just die cut one and use a negative space? Yes. You could do anything you want to do. But I loved taking a die and just die cutting some flowers. Now, if you are a card maker, the cool thing about this is that you're getting these effects that you typically would not get from using an ink pad. I mean, let's just be honest. You're not going to strategically do any of this. Plus, you get all those little spray bumps, all the little modeling, all of this. And I love this one because, you know, if you stack these flowers and then you can just cut off the stems however you want, I think cutting through that is great. And again, if you had the intention of using the negative, you could have maybe not done the other flower and then put this cutout over a white background and you would have had that piece as well. So there are options as far as the positive and negative. It just depends on what it is that you're kind of creating with this. And when we talk about dies, what I wanted to show you is that these samples, these are done with like really detailed dies. So you'll see the next one we're going to talk about, the Vault Wildflower. I think the one that I just did, yeah, the Artful Stems, like it's just these really detailed dies that you would think there's no way that skinny little die is going to cut through plastic. That's why I did it, because I didn't want to cheat and go, it cuts a circle. I mean, it actually cuts those. But there's other things that you can do when you're creating. So this one, definitely fun because I think that the colorful thing plays. And to me, this would actually be 4 cards. I would just create each one a little different, do a skinny card or a tag and put a sentiment. I think that's great. But you can also just take a colorful background. So this one was a smaller version of this background. And yes, it's a background. So it could be something for a stamp or a frame. But it can also just be something that you cut. And I wanted to save the negative to show you, like, you don't have to think about orientation when you're cutting through a background. That's the beauty of it. See all this? It's crazy. Like, things overlap, things cut into each other. And this is done multiple passes. This is not putting 50 dies and running it through. This is like positioning the die, cutting it through. Positioning the die, cutting it through. Because see, you can utilize all the areas that you want to create. But the beauty of this is that you get some great pieces. And I made a card using these pieces. I was inspired by Kulbir's card that she did using the Vault. I love this die. This was the Modern Floristry because I think they're really funky. And there's a big version of this, but I think this small size was really cool on a card. And I totally cased that card. I just did it with alcohol ink. So I used the embossing folder to just use it on regular white cardstock, the card base, regular white cardstock splattered. But these are all the flowers that I cut from this piece. So all those colors, but see how like mottled and cool and drippy. It took the thinking out of it. You know, when you're thinking about like, oh, what am I creating and what color do I want to work with here? You're just positioning dies over a background and going for it, even if it's the little center of a flower. And remember, if you don't like it, if something just really bothered you, you can always go and manipulate that one little piece with alcohol ink. So thanks for the inspiration, Kulbir. So that was another Vault where I used the alphabet. Yeah, I just loved it. And I love the die because to me, the scale of these flowers, I know people are like, oh, I already have this die. And it's a great die if you're doing big stuff, but I love the scale because you can cluster them on a card and it doesn't look like, you know, you have the botanical gardens all over your card. Just think that's really cool. Plus I love the embossing folder. So thanks, Kulbir. That was fun. So I created that, but you can go on and on. That's the thing. This was a card that I did that Ranger shared at Simon Says Create last year where we created a background. So you saw this one. We did this background. Remember, it was the ISO, 3 colors, pink, yellow, blue, blew it around, you're done. But you can make a card by just adding a silhouette die cut. I mean, that couldn't be easier. So you can take all your favorite flowers, and Mario gave me a hand. I'm like, can you cut a bunch of flowers in black?
Heck yeah.
So you can take now Distress, this gets me in a whole nother confusing thing. Distress Black Heavy Stock is the same paper as when we sold alcohol ink black cardstock. Do not confuse this with alcohol black Dura-Bright right now, but we actually used to sell this paper in the alcohol ink line. It didn't really jive because you can alcohol ink it, but it's not that great. So we moved it in the Distress line and it's available in bigger sheets. it's the same paper. So if you have that one that kind of feels like suede, that is paper and not plastic, that is what that is what Mario die cut, because you get some really wonderful detailed flowers, but they are super dark, super black, and that suede finish. And even those tiny details. So you can take just a silhouette flower and position it. Now, adhering this, well, you have a lot of options when it comes to adhering things. You can use glossy accents on Yupo. You can use collage medium on Yupo. You can use little foam squares if you're going to adhere it. So for example, on this card, it just has one of these tiny little foam squares. Simon said these have different thicknesses, so they're thick or thin, and it's just under the center of the flower. None of this is adhered. That sticker or sentiment is what holds the rest of the flower on, and that's just done with a tiny attacher. That's one of the ideology label stickers. But that's an easy thing too. So you can do a bunch of backgrounds. You can have a whole pile of black flowers. Even those cool modern ones are still fun. It gives it a totally different vibe. What's up, Mario?
Apparently your black cardstock is the ticket.
People
love it.
It's the best, I will say. I mean, seeing is believing, but when you have it and you touch it, you're like, okay, that's not normal black cardstock. It is wonderful suede stuff. I mean, you can see just the stability of that skinny, but it creates beautiful contrast. So that's a whole nother thing. Maybe you're doing backgrounds one day and you're like, I need a break. Sit down and just cut a bunch of stuff out of black cardstock. So when you need to assemble your backgrounds, it's super fast. You can do foiled strips. You can do sentiment strips. Like I mentioned, these are ideology, but these have been discontinued. So don't shoot the messenger, just saying. But like, I loved these. And you might still find them at some stores, but these are plastic stickers that are like old school label maker. But see, it's already done and you already have the raised letter. And I just stuck it down and added a tiny attacher. But those are some of my favorite sentiments because the black really balances that silhouette. And I love the shiny plastic goes with the shiny Yupo. I don't know. I was in the vibe. Is collage medium and matte medium the same? It's hard to say. Collage medium is a form of matte medium, but I couldn't say that it's the same type of formulation, but I would say that they're 90% similar. So yes, you could use matte medium or gel medium to glue. It just depends on its dry time and all of that. Collage medium just dries quicker, but you might have something that dries absolutely perfect. I would say try what you have first before you just spend money on something you might already have a version of. So there you go. So that's another card idea, just putting a silhouette or using the flowers. Okay. Another one. This one's a bit more in depth, but I think we're far enough in this Asked and Answered that we can, it's a good finisher, but it's a fun thing to do. It requires a little bit of brain thought, but you're going to be fine. The first time I did it wrong. Oh, before I do that, let me just talk real quick on black. I didn't see any questions about it, but I will talk about that. Do alcohol inks work on black cardstock? They do. But in order to use them on black cardstock, you need to put down white first. And that's really the benefit of Mixatives. So all the things that we did with the wispy blower and all that, to do a background like this would have just been blending solution, white mixative, mix it around, and then add your colors on top of it. Or you can add your white and your colors at the same time. But if you don't have any white under there, that's what the ink looks like. So this is the same color as this without white underneath it. So this is red, but you can't see it because the inks are translucent. But wherever you have white, it creates this beautiful electric vibe. And you can use the mixatives and alloys and everything else I did. This is the alcohol ink Dura-Bright. This is that plastic. So all the things you can do, you can use alcohol inks, but you need to put Snowcat mixative down first or simultaneously because you got to add that white in between that color to get it to show up. So just wanted to mention that real quick.
What's the name of the die that we cut out the black flowers? Is it this one?
We used many of them.
Oh, okay.
So it was this one and this one. It was, I don't know the names. You guys asking names, that's too many homework questions. That could be in the, somebody might know. It's these two dies. This one I know the name. This is Vault Wildflower. And I think this is either Artful Stems or Abstract Stems.
The numbers add up, at least they get the number.
Oh, you want the number? Sure. So this funky one is 665846. And the scale of this is, the vault is 666565. Keep in mind though that you might have another version of these. So I'll just bring them all. I have a bazillion. So I've done these wildflowers in many different series, even these same dies, but these dies are way bigger than the Vault. See the difference in scale? So the Vault is better for like an A2 card. These are pretty massive. But if you have these, you might be able to utilize them some other way. Just like the Floristry, like see the size of the flower? That's freaking massive. That's what I was saying. Like, it's like you're creating the botanical gardens. If you were going to put that flower on here, that's pretty much the whole card, like a corsage. So that's where the side order, and the side order is new. That's what's nice about certain dies, because the scale matters. This is really great for mixed media and journals and canvas, and you could use them together. So, because you can have the same flower, just different size orientation. So that's the benefit of having different sizes. And it comes with the honeycomb embossing folder. So, okay. Let's talk about this final thing. We'll wrap this up. This has been done by many card makers, and they've probably done it this way. So I'm not saying I invented this by anything. I've just seen it done, and I wanted to do it with alcohol ink, and because I didn't know what I was doing, I just had to play. So this is an alcohol ink background that just has dimensional letters cut out of it. Like I said, you've probably seen this done many different ways on different cards. I'm just going to show you my way, and it might work better for you, or it might be, you might have an easier way that you're ready to educate me on, which would be great. So all I did was take an alcohol inked background and used one of these bold text dies. So these are all dies that have a quote already done, okay? And there's all different quotes, even though a lot of people read it together, but it's like, you got this, lucky is a state of mind, choose to shine, love with all your heart. And there's two different versions. There was also seasonal versions of these as well. But these panel dies, there's a love you die that I used. They're just big. They have nice big words. It doesn't mean this is the only one. If once you do this technique, you can do it with whatever die you want. But what I did is I took my background, I placed the die down. So this one happened to be Make Today Count. And I ran it through and I cut it. So this is just Yupo. There's no adhesive on the back of this. There's no nothing. It was just a piece of Yupo. And then you're going to have all of these pieces. So when this is done, let me set this off to the side. Okay. And I'm still trying to, please, how to use pearl inks. Is there a video? Yes, there's videos, but yes, I can talk about pearls because you asked, because this is asked and answered. But yes, there's videos on pearls, probably 3 of them. One is called Alcohol Pearls. And that's on the blog, and then also on YouTube. Okay, so you would take out all the letters. Now, you can take them out however you want. I typically take them out the way I just showed you, and then I reassemble. And I know some people would be like, why would you do that? It just makes sense to me to do it this way, but you do whatever's going to work. But what you're going to do is, after you have all of your letters out, you would take this background, and you would stick it onto a card front. The card front that I had and I got rid of. But I did have one. Did I have it here? Did I have it here? Here's one. I mean, I made a card front intentionally. Okay. So you would stick this down. Now, if you were going to put it on black, you could have a black mat. Doesn't matter. But you would stick down your background to either black cardstock or a card base. So far, so good. And you could use tape. You can do adhesive. You can do whatever. The letters, though, I don't know if Sizzix still has this, but there's different ways to use it. But back in the day, I did this with Sizzix, but they might have it in like a bigger size. I'm not sure. But these were actually called foam adhesive sheets. Now, like I said, you probably have seen foam adhesive sheets on the market. You could use craft foam, fun foam. It's just having a foam layer. But the benefit of this is that it's a double-sided foam sheet. So most foam sheets that I see, like you peel it and you stick it down and it's foam, but it doesn't have adhesive on the other side. But it comes in black and white, which I thought was cool. So it depends on what you want your reveal to be, whether you want it to be white or black. All I do with these, it doesn't matter the size to me. I think these were initially designed for like shaker cards and stuff. But all I did was I just took scraps of it, because obviously this was the size of it. So I didn't have enough for the whole die to fit. Does that make sense? See, this is my die, Make Today Count. It wouldn't fit this way or this way. So I just ran that part through and then took another piece, cut the little scraps, because I can use all the other pieces for whatever. Anyway, you cut out the words out of this foam adhesive. Then once your card is down, you're going to pop out your sticky foam letter, You're going to peel off the back. So just imagine this was already glued to my card base. You're going to insert this into the opening. It's already sticky. Okay. And it just fits like a little puzzle. And you do that to all of them. So you pop them out of here, you peel off one side, you stick it down. Then when all of your letters are there, and again, either black or white, depending on what you want, then you just peel off the top, take your little letter, and you adhere it right over the top of it. And that's it. And you repeat. And when you're done, this is what you get. I think it's cool. I think it's a neat effect. I like the fact that the card itself is flat and just this is raised. Like I said, you may have seen this or maybe you have different ways, but to me that was really, really easy, an easy way to do it. And I like the fact that, I love the white personally because the black to me, it is a nice drop shadow, but I'd probably use black if my colors were a bit more earthy. But I think I love the idea of having that little white highlight because you will see it around it. But anyway, that's a little option. Then we're going to jump back to Pearl. So there you go. That's just a fun dimensional card. Okay, we're going to jump back to Pearls because that's it. And then we'll wrap this up because I did talk about it at the beginning and I didn't circle back. So thanks for the reminder. Because it is important to understand pearls. Pearls are great, but they don't often get mixed in. Oh my gosh. It's a hot mess over here. Okay, let's talk about alcohol pearls. So alcohol pearls are an underrated beauty product. It is a beautiful product, especially if you like shimmery pearl things, okay? Alcohol pearls are called alcohol pearls as opposed to alcohol ink. So they are different. Alcohol pearls are an alcohol ink with a coordinating pearl. So it's very much like distress spritz or like a mica stain where it has a colorant, a dye, and a matching color pearl in it, okay? So that's the big thing to know about pearls where you're like, okay, well, how is a pearl mixative different than an alcohol pearl? A pearl mixative is just clear with white pearl powder. Alcohol pearls are literally alcohol ink with a coordinating mica powder in the bottom. So these have to be shaken anytime you use them. And the colors are very cool. There's only 18 colors because you can use them by themselves, but they're really designed to work with the alcohol inks, okay? So when you use them, you have to shake them. So you can lay them on their sides. You can there's so many great colors and the color names are fun, enchanted, intrigue, radiant, sublime, alchemy. I mean, they're wild, wild colors. They're just fun. If you're shaking these, because you have to shake a lot of them, you have to shake them for a while. Even though that mixing ball, it doesn't get stuck in the mud like with mixatives and alloys. You can hear it in there, but you see the bottom of that, you really have to get rid of all of that mica before you use it. Otherwise, it won't damage anything. You won't be using pearl. Meaning, if you just opened one of these bottles right now, like this one, and you squeezed out purple, you're squeezing out purple alcohol ink because all your pearl is still down at the bottom. So you don't have to worry about this clogging like you would like a sprayer or something, okay? But you have to mix them up. I'll always bring this in because this is just fun and a thing. I got this when I had surgery years back, but if you have trouble shaking anything, this is just a little bottle shaker. It has suction cups, you plug it in. It seems silly, but it's actually used for nail polish, so don't judge, but you can even put your sprayers on there. Comes with a little rubber tab, you strap it around the little bottle, and you turn it on. And it mixes up that color and that mica really quick. So if you're doing this, I'll admit, if I'm gonna do pearls, I'll do this to all of my colors and keep them on their side. Then, because see, the pearl is already gone, then when I want to use it, I just have to give it a quick shake and it remixes. I don't have to sit there and shake the snot out of every color. So that's just, doesn't take long if you're going to work with pearls. Just kind of create. Pretty cool, right? Just take that off, put on another one. And because this strap's really, if you had a bigger bottle, you can even put big spray bottles on there and shake spray bottles. Yeah, you can. It's a cool, like I said, sometimes you see stuff and you roll your eyes do I really need that? But maybe you don't. But man, when I'm getting my pearls out, I definitely did. I couldn't shake a bottle at all. Okay, I'm just gonna do this and then I'll do intrigue and then we'll go. Okay. Oh yeah, that vortex mixer, Patricia, that you bought it. Those are pricey, but I saw it. That's really cool. You like touch it and it like spins it. It's wild. That might be my upgrade because that is cool. You just like touch it and it does it. Pretty neat. Okay. So here's what you need to know about alcohol pearls. So if you're multitasking right now, if you're kind of half listening, that's okay, but go back and rewatch this part then, because it is the most important thing to remember about pearls. Because unfortunately, when pearls came out on the market, there were just people that didn't want to follow this one step because they thought maybe I was, trying to sell something. I don't know what it was, but hey Mario, can you do me a favor real quick? I burned through my Yupo, so can you just chop me up a couple pieces real quick?
3.5?
3.5, yeah. Just a couple. I just need to use it on the pearls. Okay. The thing to know about pearls is that they have a beautiful luminous look because of that mica. But in order to use them, in order to get them to work, they must be used with blending solution. And thanks, Mario. And that is where people just were like, yeah, okay, he just wants to sell his magic elixir. It has something to do with the formulation of the ink and the type of pearl that's in here. So this isn't the same mica that would be in Distress Spritz or the same that would be in like a water base. This is a solvent-based mica that can actually function in this system, if you will. If you don't use blending solution, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you the side by side so you can make the decision yourself. Your results will be less than stellar. They'll actually, thanks Mario, I'm good. They're actually pretty gross. So let's go and do, I like how we're ending with pearl because it's kind of like how we started. So we're going to take 2 pieces of Yupo. We'll have one here. I switched to Yupo heavy because I burned through a pack. That's the thing. If you're getting your surfaces, you'll go through them pretty quick. This is just taking a standard sheet and cutting it in half because these are 5 by 7. So if you slice it, then you just get 2 card fronts real easy. Okay, so just like before, we're going to have blending solution on this side, and we're going to put ISO on this side. But I'm going to use just the bottle of ISO. Okay, and we're going to do a pearl. I'll do intrigue. I've done it in other videos. It's just a color that shows up, but I'll play with other colors. Okay. Here we go. I've seen people in the chat already where they're like, yep, learn the hard way. And it was just a thing that I could not convince people of. The product is fine. It's just you weren't paying attention to how you use it. And I think sometimes as makers, we can get a little creative and the results are great. But in this case, not so good. So this is ISO and pearl. Okay, so I'll put 4 in there. Doesn't really matter how many drops. This is going to be blending solution and pearl. Okay, so right away, can you see how the ink reacted in the different solvents? Of course you could. This, it moved, it started sizzling. This was just like, here I am. This is going to flow beautifully. We're going to have shimmer, we're going to have ink, we're going to have whatever. This is not. This is going to clump into giant chunks of goo. Now, you may love that. You may be like, this is what I'm looking for. I've been looking for a chunky ink my whole life, and now I found it. You're good. ISO and pearl, that's what you have. It doesn't do this, which is flow and create this pearl. So if you use ISO with pearls, you will get chunks. So that's the thing. If you're going to use pearls, you need to stick with blending solution. Now there is an in-between. There is a gray. There is a way of like, well, can I use blending solution and then add a little ISO? Yes. So let's focus on this one where it's done right, because there's no saving this. Like if you went in and added blending solution now, could you break down these chunks? No, they will be forever chunk, okay? So that was really the thing. I mean, my gosh, we were taking a beating in the alcohol ink group where they're like, oh, it's garbage. He puts his name on anything. I'm like, it is the coolest product if you just followed the instructions to use it. And then I just gave up. I'm like, you know what? You do you. You can miss out on it because I think it's beautiful. So I'm going to put some more blending solution down. And now we're just going to add some colors. Let's make some pretty backgrounds. So now we're going to add a little bit of Celestial. Let's add a little touch of Villainous. That's in there. We can even throw in a little bit of Alchemy. That's going to be gold, but I didn't shake that one up. So now I just got to go for it. Okay. A little Alchemy in there. Ooh, beautiful. Okay. And we're going to take this one through stages. So it's going to do what the alcohol inks do, because remember, it is alcohol ink at its core. It just has a pearl in it. I'm going to add a little bit more purple because I'm not liking, or the pink. I'm going to add a little bit of sludge in there. Okay. So once you have stuff down, so in this case, I consider it down. Could I go in and add some ISO to this? Just added ISO. The answer? Mario?
Oh, I didn't hear the question.
Oh,
Sorry,
yes. Oh, sorry. The answer is yes. You can. It doesn't turn into chunk because the pearl has already been dissipated by the blending solution. However, if you keep going with ISO and then you try to add more ink into the ISO, it will chunk. Okay? So my advice is if you're sticking with pearls, try to use as much blending solution or ink as possible. So let's talk about how do we save this disaster. I'm going to add some blending solution, but now I'm going to also go in and add some alcohol ink because you can use the two together because after all, they are alcohol inks. They just have a pearl in them as well, like a bonus alcohol ink. So add some blue. Let's add a little bit of dandelion. Let's see what we got. Sorry, Mario, caught you off guard, huh? He's like, don't ask me. I'm watching the chat. You can't hit me with a trick question right there. Ooh, let's use some boysenberry. This is such a great purple. Whew, look at that. It's intense. Okay. We're just doing this just to kind of get some more action going on here. There we go. Okay, now while this is going, I'm throwing caution to the wind. I'm just going to put a bunch of different pearls in there. Ooh, that had a blue cap. See that? Anyone else do that? See? Blue and pink make purple. That's a wrong capper. So I'm just going to put in a coordinating pearl-ish into that area while this is wet. So that's another benefit to having these inks already shaken up because it's just a quick shakety shake and then you can drip it on versus starting over and shaking the bottle. Okay, now let's go and just manipulate these. A little bit of blending. Just keep that stuff going around. Oh, that's what I was going for. I wanted some green happening. There we go. This right here, this little area, I can even fill in this white space. I like to embrace the space, but in case on this one, I'm just going to fill in the blankers. See, so take that blower and just go, point it in the direction you need it to go, is what I'm saying. Okay. Oh, I'm happy with that. Okay. So while that's drying, while that's doing its thing, could we do all those fancy things we did at the beginning, the whole speckly vibe by spraying ISO on it? Absolutely. You know, you can still go in and add ISO for effects. That's what I would say. You know, go in with a brush and you can touch it, or, you know, you can just, see, spray a little ISO. See how reactive that is? It's really fun. And that creates a cellular thing. And then we can dry it. And again, you can use a hair dryer, you can use the blower, but if I dry this, it's going to keep those little cellular things a little bit better. But they like to fade in as they go. Okay. Pretty crazy, pretty wild, pretty fun. Okay.
That was so fun.
It was fun to see, huh?
Yeah.
Now we're going to pick this up, and I'm sure the bottom is probably going to look beautiful because it tends to. Yeah, not, well, I wouldn't say beautiful. It's okay. So this is still drying, but I want you to start seeing, like, you can tell where it's dry. See that blue and that yellow and that pink? But you're going to get this really beautiful sheen, this pearly sheen to the finish. That's what alcohol pearl does. It just provides like that luminous, almost wispy effect to it, but you can keep working it. That's the beauty. Could you stamp over this? Yes. Could you then swipe and drag it? Yes. You can really do whatever you wanted to do with the background. We can even spray it again. I mean, Mario loved that whole ISO thing, but we can do that again. And you can spray it in areas too. I'm going to actually give it a good hit of ISO, because ISO will also blend without you even touching it. And this is where you start getting into doing just some, this is where my experimental side gets the best of me, and I destroy things, and I don't care. So here I'm going to spray more ISO because I'm going to make a print. This could be a hot mess, and it might not. But you don't know what you don't know, and it's paper and ink, people. You got to enjoy it. But if you really love something, then leave it. But if you're like, like I was just, I'm doing a print. And it might be, But you know, what we've learned with alcohol ink is that, oh yeah, that's what I'm wanting, is you're getting two totally different effects. I mean, this is kind of like underwater sea urchin thing, but I love that I kept the intensity here, and I got this background. I consider that a winner. So I'm just going to take a hairdryer, but you could use a heat tool if you wanted to. I'm just going to dry it. Now, because I use so much ISO, I'm going to show you the little chunkies that I got. In this case, I'm going to call it mixed media. But I will say, the chunk factor of this, it's not as bad as the first part, but you're going to see up here in the pink because I sprayed so much ISO because I can't spray blending solution. I got a little chunk action. I'm okay with that. Oh, but look at that. See, there's my chunk. I don't mind. But look at that pearl. See that? Isn't that so cool? I love that. I don't mind that at all. Because, again, if you're die cutting or whatever, ooh, that's good. Yeah, you can put in a clean piece of paper on your mat. I'm going to set this one. I don't know where to put these. It's like I need my, I'll put it over here, my drying mat. That, not good. Blech. Somebody might like it, though. This one, look at this pretty print. Look at how pretty those pearls are when you print them. See, they just, like I said, when I said it gives you like a wispy look, it's just because that pearl adds a little bit of sheen to it, like iridescent sheen. Beautiful. And could you go in and make a print? Absolutely, you could. Well, we're almost in the home stretch. That's how that texture paste is, but it's still really wet. But what you could do on this one is once it's dry, we could go in and actually spray through this, and this one's just not going to dry in time for live. But I did that in earlier videos. So there we go. I mean, gosh, that's just great. We could spray it and try to make a print there. There's so many different things that you can do. Could you scrape off the sludge? Yeah, you probably could. You could wipe off some of that. Like I'm just taking it off with my finger right now while it's still wet. Not bad. I got the high points off. Not bad at all. Anyway, some fun things to do with pearls. Fun things to do just in general. I hope that you enjoyed it. Asked and Answered is like so many things that you could do. Does pearl work with lift ink? Yes and no. Alcohol lift ink is really designed to lift alcohol ink. That's in the name. So it has trouble lifting a pigment off of it, which the pearls have mica, that's pigment. Same with alloy and mixative. However, you can do it. It just takes multiple lifts, meaning, and Vicki Evans did a cool thing with mixatives once. I think it was mixatives. But you could, if you had a stamp tool especially, you would stamp it in lift ink, lift it, but leave it in your stamp tool, and then clean your stamp, put another fresh batch of lift ink, stamp it, lift it again, and it will lift through that pigment. It just takes longer than just the ink. So you can, but it takes more steps than what I just showed you. You have to, sometimes you're luck out the first time, but usually not. So, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Kathy. The most important thing really about these Asked and Answered, it's fun. I could demo for hours. That's just what I do. Because I wanted these Asked and Answers to be 2 hours, but I already see like I shot that one. But I think what's really important to remember is just to play. I see Tiffany said pearls on vellum is magic, and you're absolutely right. Pearls on vellum and translucent, because it's more of a toothy substrate, they dance. They're so much fun. It's just about finding that opportunity to play, because especially with this medium, the only way to get respect for this medium is to play, and to get over your fear of this medium is to play, because you can definitely do it. Someone said, don't forget the stencil. The stencil's here, but I'm not sure if it's dry or not, but I'll lift it off just so you can see. Oh yeah, this one's pretty good. It's dry. Thanks for reminding me. Look at this one. Look how beautiful that is. That's a print. Cool, right? So much fun. I mean, and there's enough ink left on this stencil that I would spray it with alcohol again and make a print. Crazy. Just think that, I don't even know where the first one is. But anyway, what I was saying is, play with anything that you have. And as you want to learn, there is like all of these Asked and Answered. I like to do it because I want to connect with you. I want to be able to answer a question that you specifically have, you know, like, does it work on this, or can you use this? And I try to cover those questions that maybe in a demo I kind of gloss over, because I just think like, here's what you really do with the ink. And that's the important thing. But as chaotic as these Asked and Answers are to some people, because with the good comments, we've also got the not so good comments where it's like, you know, you need to have an agenda and a schedule, and well, that's not going to happen for this. But do know that these Asked and Answered are hopefully designed to kind of to get your mind sparked, to be like, okay, I'm going to get over the fear and I'm just going to try it. But there are videos on my YouTube channel and YouTube in general. If you just type alcohol ink, you will see so many different talented people sharing skills and tips and tricks for how to use a medium. And that goes for alcohol ink, distress, oxide, sprays, any of that stuff. So the whole point of this series for Asked and Answered is to maybe get those questions answered that maybe I wouldn't cover in the video, but also to spark that creative mind to be like, gosh, he's just winging it, because you can. That's the whole idea. The best part of this creative industry and the room or the closet or the storage cart of art supplies is to use them. So when you're like, well, how long does it last? It shouldn't last you very long, because you should be using it. I think that to me is the most important thing of creating with it. Get away from that fear. Get over yourself as far as how intimidated you are by an art medium, because I think that when you learn to play, you'll get over that fear really quick. And the only way to do it is by doing. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks, Mario. Thanks for the stuff I threw in this live. There were inks rolling, like open bottle of ink. I dropped the orange. It flew everywhere. The brayer that went down, the blocks. Oh, thanks, Steph. You couldn't find it? We'll find the brayer. Sure, we'll find it it's good. I think it is important to have a good time and play with the stuff that you have, because that is the best. Playing is the best. And you can always go back and rewatch this. Like, once you try it yourself and you're like, that didn't work. What did I miss? You go back and you see it. Yeah. And I heard you laughing in the background. It was a good fun. Me today. It's just how it is. I love alcohol inks. Like many of you, I don't use them as often as I should, because that was the other thing that I saw when I posted it, where people are like, I have them and I've used them, but gosh, it's been a while since I have used them. And I hope that it kind of breaks that down of just getting stuff out. Nikki, I rewatch all the time. I watched all of my alcohol ink videos over the last 2 days before I did this, because I even needed to remember, I'm like, did I let the bubble wrap dry or did I lift it? Did I do this? That to me that's the most important thing of remembering, is that you have the ability to go back. And while I don't really timestamp the Asked and Answered, I try to capture them on the blog, where if you go to timholtz.com and you type in Asked and Answered, you'll see the previous 2 that we have. I have photos of kind of what we did, but it's pretty tough to really encapsulate this, because the ideas are kind of wild. And I love you guys for engaging in this. That's what makes this so much fun, is to see those questions and give that out. So, and if you show up late for class, will we call you out? Of course we will, but that's the fun of it. It's all in good fun. You know, it's no different than if you were in school and you showed up late for class. You wouldn't say like, what are we doing? You just slide in like, I've been here all along. I don't know what you're saying. I think that's right. That's the funny thing. So, all right. I hope we covered everything. Thank you guys so much. I do appreciate it. It's been good fun. And thank you, Mario, because the chat, what you don't see when I'm demoing is like, his hand will come over and he'll point to your questions, and that's how I see them, because I tend to get lost in the creative fun of it all. I think really, that's...
You do a lot of stuff for one person.
Well,
you're demoing. You're working like this through your phone. You got an iPad in front of you. You're looking at this.
That's a thing. I mean, like, because I do the lives on my phone, all I'm focused on is this little screen above this big work area. So sometimes, you know, I got to pay attention
in a space that big.
And kind of create what it is. But yeah, it's good fun. So thank you guys for spending some time this Saturday with us. We had a great time. Go and enjoy the rest of your day. If you're playing, play. If you want to share on social media, share on Instagram, share on Facebook. Just be sure to share your process. It doesn't have to be the finished thing, because that will inspire everyone else. So
great job.
Thank you. And listen, I'll say this again because I haven't said it in a while. If you don't have anything nice to say, find something nice to say. Find something. Don't give yourself this free pass of, I don't have anything nice to say, I'll say nothing. No way. That's a cheap escape strategy. If you don't have anything nice to say and you stopped because you were going to say something, switch it around and find something nice to say instead, because it'll change your whole perspective on how you see things. Because sometimes in the creative space, we're a bit cynical, where it's like, I wouldn't use that color. Ooh, that's a hot mess. Whoa, too much glue. Whatever it is, I read these comments from people and I see other people share them and I'm like, horrendous. But instead of like calling those people out or being that person, because it is, you know, we get a little judgy McJudge, try to turn that around and say, you know what? I was going to stop to say like, ooh, not my jam. And even if you weren't going to type it in, that is a great way where you're like, you know what? I'm going to leave something nice. I'm going to find something I like about it, whether it's colors or whether it's dye or it's whatever, because it does change your whole perspective around. Art
because nice matters. It just
right.
does.
Nice matters, but creativity above everything else is so subjective, right? That's what makes this creative industry so amazing, is everybody likes something, but everybody doesn't like everything. I don't know anybody that likes every food, every music, every outfit, every color, every creative look. You just don't. We have our preferences, we have our style, but it's also cool to see something in someone else's work. Like when I saw Kulbir's card, I loved it. I loved how colorful it was. I love that. And I'm like, man, that's so colorful. I'm not that splashy of color, but I found something out of it where I'm like, but I love the composition of that card. I love the flowers. I love that hello. You know what? I'm going to remember that, and I'm going to do my interpretation of that, but always call out where you get inspiration. So that is what the creativity spice is all about. You just have to just like get it in your system and love it. So enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.